Will address Congress shortly at a fraught time for the special relationship. Broadcaster Piers Morgan told Andrew Marr it'll be a hugely significant speech.
It's going to be the most important moment of his reign, but also probably the most important moment he's had as a member of the royal family in terms of his duty to his country. This is only the second time one of our monarchs has addressed Congress, and obviously he's following arguably the greatest monarch in history.
You can hear the speech live and in full over the next hour here on LBC. MPs have voted against putting the Prime Minister through a sleaze investigation. The government won with a majority of 112. Opposition parties wanted the PM to be investigated for allegedly misleading them about the recruitment of Lord Mandelson as our US ambassador. Labour's Emma Lewell wanted Sir Keir Starmer to refer himself to the investigating committee.
Like the public, I feel let down, disappointed, and I am angry. Peter Mandelson should never have been appointed. This was a fundamental failure of judgment.
Tom Baldwin, a former Labour Party senior advisor and biographer for the PM, told us Sir Keir never liked Peter Mandelson.
No, you always try to keep him at arm's distance. There's always been a lack of confidence in him about his own values. The Keir Starmer I got to know when I was writing the book. He's grown up on an international stage filled with infants. And the Keir Starmer who sometimes shows himself in domestic politics isn't that person.
Sir Keir's former top advisor says he didn't try to push through Lord Mandelson's appointment. Morgan McSweeney's denied trying to get his vetting for the role skipped, but says it was wrong to give him the job. Labour's Emily Thornberry heads the committee that was questioning him. She thinks pressure was put on civil servants.
Peter Mandelson was appointed on the 20th of December, and on the 20th of January they wanted him to be in America to be at the inauguration. That simply wasn't enough time to do everything that was expected, and it meant that everything was rushed.
2 men from Afghanistan have been charged with raping a woman in Plymouth at the weekend. They're back in court in June. A man's been arrested over a car bomb attack outside a police station. A vehicle was hijacked over the weekend and blew up in Dunmurry near Belfast. The United Arab Emirates is going to leave the OPEC group of oil-producing nations after nearly 60 years. The Gulf state's energy minister said being a country with no obligation under the group would give it more flexibility. It says it has a lot of surplus oil stuck in the Strait of Hormuz because of the war in Iran. But former Shell executive Andy Brown says that's not the only reason.
Look, I think it's a combination. It's also about the relationship with Saudi, with Sudan and Yemen. It's also about Russia being part of OPEC +1 and supporting Iran. So they've taken the most aggressive anti-Iran position in the Gulf, aligned with the US.
And a man could face up to 20 years in jail after pleading guilty over a plot to attack Taylor Swift's concerts in Vienna. It was foiled, but 3 performances were cancelled. The lawyer for the Austrian man, known only as Baron A, insists he's changed.
Of course, he deeply regrets it all. It is also due to the long period of detention that he says it was the biggest mistake of his life.
In the city, the FTSE 100 closed up 11 at 10,332. The pound buys $1.35 and €1.15. LBC weather, dry tonight, cloudy in the northeast and breezy in the south, lows of 1 to 9 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Matt Hewitt.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening and welcome to the show. It's Iain Dale here live in Washington, D.C. With my very able colleague. I like to think of him as the Muttley to my Dastardly. Or is it the other way around? I'm not quite sure. Simon Marks is with me for the whole... Well, he might not be after that introduction.
Someone on my social media feed last night was saying that we were the Ant and Dec of radio, but he wasn't sure who was Ant and who was Dec.
I think we can set ourselves
even higher
than that. Right. It is a big day today, a really big day for, I think, not only for the King, but I think for the whole country, because what happens over the next 5 or 6 hours, I think could actually redefine the relationship between our two countries, the United Kingdom and the United States, over the next few years. And that's not hyperbole coming from a media commentator. I think that is actual fact. Simon, you're watching pictures at the moment, I think, of the King arriving on Capitol Hill.
Yes, absolutely. The King has arrived in Congress. We just saw him within the last minute or so, just as we were coming on the air, walking through the rotunda at the Capitol, being escorted by Mike Johnson, the Republican Speaker of the House of Representatives. Remember that Mike Johnson also is second in line to the presidency after Vice President J.D. Vance. We will be seeing lots of both of them over the next couple of hours, because J.D. Vance will be sitting behind the King, as will Mike Johnson. J.D. Vance sitting there in his capacity as President of the Senate. Right now, the King is on Capitol Hill meeting the Speaker, and also then going into a meeting with the so-called Gang of Four here. That is the Speaker, Hakeem Jeffries, the leader of the Democrats in the House of Representatives, the Senate Majority Leader John Thune, who of course is a Republican, and the Senate Democratic Leader Senator Chuck Schumer. So they will be having discussions behind closed doors. Then the Gang of Four will lead both of their majesties into the chamber for this historic address that the King will be making to a joint session of Congress. And I think, Iain, you're absolutely right. I mean, you say that it will define the trajectory of the future relationship. In what fashion that trajectory moves, I think, is going to be up for question, because we know that we're going to hear in this speech about renewal, which is an important word for the King to be using under the current somewhat parlous circumstances that exist in terms of the bilateral relationship. The one phrase that is being reported that he will definitely use is this one: time and again, our two countries have always found ways to come together. Which is an interesting way of couching it. You don't have to go up there and say things are in a terrible state, but time and again. You can just say time and again our two countries have always found ways to come together.
That's classic diplomacy at work.
Absolutely.
Isn't it? Well, let's. By the way, if you've never watched this programme as opposed to listen to it, I suggest that tonight is the night that you might want to start watching, because we are going to bring you the King's speech live from Capitol Hill at 8 o'clock. It'll be in vision as well, so you can watch us on 3 different ways: on Global Player, the LBC app, or the LBC YouTube channel. But before we get into that, let's just hear a little bit of what's happened during the course of the day, because earlier this afternoon the President spoke outside the White House to formally welcome the King and Queen to the US, and despite his administration's very clear anger at this country over refusing to take part in the Iran war, Trump did finally express some appreciation for the special relationship.
In the centuries since we won our independence, Americans have had no closer friends than the British. We share that same root. We speak the same language. We hold the same values. And together our warriors have defended the same extraordinary civilization under twin banners of red, white, and blue.
And we also heard the President pay tribute to King Charles.
His Majesty's intellect, passion, and devotion have been a blessing to the British people, but not only to his own country, but to the cherished bond between the United States and the United Kingdom. And I am very certain that it will continue that way long into the future.
But today there's been a little bit of a hitch on this visit. These are some of the comments which have been leaked to the Financial Times, made by the British ambassador here in Washington, Sir Christian Turner, to a group of students a couple of months ago.
Special relationship is a phrase I try not to utter, because it's quite nostalgic, it's quite backwards looking, and it has a lot of sort of baggage about it. I think there is probably one country that has a special relationship with the United States, and that's probably Israel.
Well, let's get a view on what's happening today, and indeed those comments that Christian Turner made there from Lord Kim Darroch, former UK ambassador to the United States and also former UK National Security Advisor. Kim, welcome to the programme. Thanks for joining us. Let's just start on these comments from Christian Turner, because, I've read some comments that you made earlier in the day, and you said, well, he didn't actually say anything wrong, but surely he shouldn't have been so indiscreet in front of a group of students.
Good evening, Iain. Good to see you. I just think you've got to think about the context here. Christian took time. I mean, he's a friend of mine now, so I declare an interest here. Took time out of an extraordinarily busy diary 2 months ago to talk to a group of British sixth formers, an informal private conversation. He invites them into, whether it was in his office or in the residence. No doubt he gave them all a cup of tea or something similar. And they asked a series of questions, which he answered honestly and informally. And you only have to read the answers to see this was an informal private conversation where he was expressing private views. And one of his guests took it into their heads to record it all and then to give it to the newspapers in an effort to embarrass him. I think that's pretty deceitful behaviour. It's an appalling betrayal of Christians' hospitality. And it's just a very destructive thing to do. If this is the world we now live in, then it means you're going to have to sign a non-disclosure agreement and hand in your mobile phones before you ever talk to a British ambassador anywhere in the world, because they can't trust what you're going to do with what you say. And you can't ever have an informal conversation where you relax and speak a little bit freely. And of course you can say there were things, I mean, if he had known that this was happening, he wouldn't have dreamt of saying some of the things that he said, although most of them are actually, pretty much all of them are factually true. And obviously he would now be thinking, I wish I had said this is all entirely off the record, though it may still have been recorded. But really, this kind of behaviour, I mean, this is the world we now live in, you have to accept it. But it makes me kind of glad that I left 6 years ago, this sort of thing that goes on.
Look, I accept what you say, but he was very new in the job. Okay, you can put it down to a little bit of inexperience, I suppose, but I mean, he is a very experienced diplomat. To speculate on the future prospects of the Prime Minister staying in his job, I would suggest was something that you would never have done when you were ambassador, even in an informal setting, because you were well aware that somebody could possibly be recording it. And you have to be aware of these things, as you say, in today's environment.
Well, I'm sure he'll be aware of it in future. I'm sure he'll treat it as a lesson learned. And I'm sure he will wish now he had said, none of you are going to record this, something like that. But I still think, it's a sad comment on the state of the world that you talk to a group of British sixth formers and this is how they use what you said to them.
Okay.
And you might have expected a level of trust there, which turns out to have been undeserved.
Well, let's turn to the events of this evening, because it is going to be, I think, possibly, as Piers Morgan said to Andrew Marr, possibly the most important day of the King Charles's reign so far. He's going to make this speech to Congress in a little under an hour. If you had still been ambassador, what would have been your advice to him on what he should and possibly shouldn't be saying? Because this speech is, in effect, written by the government, isn't it?
It is, although from my experience of seeing the King at work, which was, of course, all when he was Prince of Wales, I remember him coming to Brussels when I was there and making a couple of speeches to the European Parliament. I remember him coming out to Washington, I think, a couple of times for George Bush's funeral and for one other event where he was giving a speech. And there is a certain amount of personal stuff that he feeds into these speeches. And he goes through the draft very carefully the night before, spends a couple of hours doing it with his staff. So there is a bit of his, my guess, of his personal language in there. But you're right. The sense of it will be, and the bulk of it will come from the government. And everything that the King adds himself, he will have cleared with the Foreign Office and with Number 10. So it is a government speech. I don't think it's an opportunity, it's a moment where you go into any kind of detail on the current clashes that we've seen, which are mostly President Trump saying disparaging things about Prime Minister. Prime Minister isn't really responding with insults, and it's right that he shouldn't. I don't think you go into detail on that kind of stuff. There may be some clever language you can find to try and smooth things over. We'll see. I'm intrigued myself to listen to the speech, which I'll listen to live on your show. But mostly it'll be about history, about shared values, about moments in the past when we have, fought on the beaches of Normandy and this kind of thing, and about the future and how much we can do together in the future. And it'll be about the breadth and depth of the relationship between the UK and the US, which is, whether you want to call it special or not, it's unique. And there's a lot there worth celebrating. I think also he will probably say something about the British Armed Forces, about which the President has made some rather ill-judged and disparaging remarks. And if he has the opportunity to actually say, it's not quite, he said, very diplomatically, and this is what we're contributing, for example, in the Gulf at the moment, we have 1,000 personnel at the moment out in the Gulf, and that would be good too. But it'll be big picture.
Do you think that he will make any reference to the victims of Jeffrey Epstein? Because a leading House Democrat is suggesting that he's heard from the British ambassador that he might well do that.
Now, that's where you bowled me middle stump, because I know that question is out there, and I simply don't know whether he will do it or not. If I were advising him, I think I wouldn't, because the moment you say that, you're essentially apologising for your brother. I just think it's very uncomfortable for the king to have to sort of apologise to a member of his family if he's going to say something about this. But we shall see. Maybe someone will find a very, very clever piece of drafting that allows him to allude to it without, having to go into that the sort of questions or the sort of language that I would be concerned about.
Kim, thank you very much indeed for joining us this evening. That's Lord Kim Darroch there, former British ambassador to the United States. And I think that is something that we're all going to be looking out for. Will he make any reference to Epstein or indeed the victims of Epstein? 0345 6060 973 is the number to call if you'd like to take part in our conversation. We're going to be talking about what we think the king might say, what he should say, and then, of course, afterwards, what he did say and what he might have said. I suppose that's the best way of summing it up. So Simon Marks will be with us throughout the programme. But there's lots of things been going on back home in UK politics today, as you will be well aware. Aki Chambray will be joining us in just a moment. It is 17 minutes past 7 here on LBC.
Weekdays from 7 a.m.
Why don't you get the Prime Minister on the phone and say, come on, Sir Keir, we've actually got to show some action here.
Straight to the point.
You're going backwards.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
This is not a one-off incident.
Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app. Download it now from your app store. LBC.
You've probably been with the same energy supplier for decades. And why wouldn't you be? Loyalty matters. But lately, bigger hasn't always felt better. You've probably dealt with long waits and endless automated menus in search of someone who can actually help. Octopus Energy is now Britain's biggest energy supplier, trusted by over 8 million customers, because we do things differently. Our people focus on the most important thing, you. When you call, you'll speak to a real person. No robotic scripts, no computer says no, just an honest conversation with someone who actually wants to help. Join the millions who've already made the move. Octopus Energy, recommended by which a record 9 years running. Visit octopus.energy/better for verification.
Tesco Insurance are driving down the cost of motoring with 10% off car insurance. Take out a car insurance policy before the 15th of May 2026 and you'll get 10% off with club card prices. We offer a range of cover options, so you can choose the one that's right for you. Save 10% when you buy or renew a car policy with Tesco Insurance. Search Tesco Car Insurance and get a quote direct today. Club card required. Excludes add-ons. T's and C's apply.
Octopus Energy. Great value and outstanding customer service. Recommended by which a record 9 years running.
Iain Dale. Text 84850. This is LBC.
Simon, you just showed me something before we went on air. Just tell our listeners what you were showing.
So a story has broken here in the last 45 minutes or so via both The Bulwark, a website critical of Donald Trump, but also simultaneously via Fox News, because they appear to have been warned by the White House and given a heads up that this story was coming. And it has been revealed that the State Department is finalising plans for a limited edition American passport that will be issued during this 250th birthday year, and it will feature a picture of Donald Trump on the inside cover.
Surely not.
He is putting his picture, if this all goes ahead, and there's every indication that it's going to, the White House appears to be conceding not only that these plans are in the pipeline, but according to the Bulwark, they are being finalised. He's already putting his signature on the banknotes, which I think is only the second time in American history that's happened, and you've got to go back, I think, to the 1800s to find the first time. There are commemorative coins being issued, which will feature his face, his head on them, and now he's planning to put his own portrait inside an American passport.
No sign of George Washington at all, then?
Well, I don't know if it completely supplants all of the existing motifs that exist within the passport. But, I mean, it is a staggering move. Whether you would be forced, if you were applying for a passport during this year, to get one of these, or whether you would request it if you wanted one, I'm not clear. But either way, the point here, of course, is that these passports have a 10-year life in the United States, and you'd be carrying around a document in your breast pocket with Donald Trump on the inside cover for the next decade, long after it is presumed that he will have ridden out of this town.
Well, I suppose the agenda will be stopping Democrats from travelling abroad because they wouldn't want a picture of Donald Trump in their passport.
Yes.
But there we go. Right, let's turn our attention briefly to what's going on in UK politics today, because this morning, Sir Philip Barton, the former Permanent Secretary at the Foreign Office, and Morgan McSweeney, the former Chief of Staff at Number 10, they were both giving evidence to Emily Thornberry's Foreign Affairs Select Committee. And then, of course, there was a long debate in the House of Commons as to whether Keir Starmer should be referred to the Privileges Committee for having allegedly misled the House of Commons about the whole vetting affair. Well, Aggie Chambray joins me now, LBC's Deputy Political Editor. Now, we've had the vote within the last hour. Nobody thought that this would go through, Aggie, but I mean, take us through the events of the day, because it has been quite something, hasn't it, to watch?
It's been an extraordinary day, Ian, starting at 9 a.m. this morning with Sir Philip Barton, who's, of course, the former top civil servant in the Foreign Office. And he talked about those two key issues of the day. Number one, whether or not the Prime Minister misled the House of Commons. Of course, a very serious accusation on the point where he said that all due diligence had been followed. And he was also asked whether any pressure had been put on Foreign Office officials. So on that first point, on that second point of pressure, he said, yes, there was pressure, but no, it didn't sound like there was pressure about the substance of Peter Mandelson's vetting. So pressure on the timing, yes, but not pressure on whether or not Peter Mandelson was found to have passed the developed vetting. On that other point, which Keir Starmer was accused of misleading the House on, that was about whether or not due process was followed. And Sir Philip was asked that question and listened to his response and listened to the silence at the start of his answer too.
I'm going to dodge. I'm really sorry, but I just actually don't think it's for me to sit here it's not for me it's for others, including, all of you as members of Parliament to come to a view on that.
So that's Sir Philip Barton, I think quite revealing there, A, the silence, and B, the fact that he did not want to answer that question. But after him, it was the turn of the lesser spotted Morgan McSweeney, the former Chief of Staff in Downing Street, who so many people, Ian, had never even heard talk, despite the fact that he'd been the Prime Minister's right-hand man for so many years. And perhaps Sir Keir Starmer would never have been Labour leader, perhaps he'd never been Prime Minister without Morgan McSweeney. And he started with a personal pre-prepared statement.
The appointment of Mandelson as ambassador was a serious error of judgment. I advised the Prime Minister in support of that appointment, and I was wrong to do so. It is also important, however, to distinguish between what I did do and what I did not do. What I did do was make a recommendation based on my judgment that Mandelson's experience, relationships and political skills could serve the national interest in Washington at an important moment. That judgment was a mistake. What I did not do was oversee national security vetting, ask officials to ignore procedures, request that steps should be skipped, or communicate explicitly or implicitly that checks should be cleared at all costs.
Morgan McSweeney did also admit to asking Sir Philip to conduct the process at pace, but not to do anything improper. He did also say, Ian, that he was surprised to hear about the depth of the relationship between Lord Mandelson and Jeffrey Epstein.
How I understood it at the time was a passing acquaintance that he regretted having, and that he apologised for. What has emerged since then was way, way, way worse than I had expected at the time. And it was when I saw the pictures, when I saw the Bloomberg questions in September 2025, I have to say it was like a knife through my soul.
And then, Ian, came the debate and finally the vote. And it seems like those two testimonies from those crucial people in this row over Lord Mandelson's vetting didn't really change the mind of many Labour MPs when they were talking and when they were voting. The result, as you say, came in the last hour, and MPs did overwhelmingly vote against referring the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, to the Privileges Committee, the very same committee, of course, that helped to bring down Boris Johnson, with a majority of 112, so 335 MPs voting with the government against Keir Starmer being referred, and 223 voting with Kemi Badenoch, with Ed Davey, for him being referred. There were, though, rebels. 15 Labour MPs rebelled against the government, against that three-line whip, including people like Emma Lewell, who spoke in the debate, Graham Morris, Kate Osborne, to Richard Bergen, people like that, and Carl Turner, who recently lost the Labour whip, too, also voted in favour of the motion. I think Number 10 will be hoping this is the end of this chapter, of this particular saga of Lord Mandelson, but we will have to see whether or not that's the case.
Aggie, thank you very much indeed. That's Aggie Chambray, LBC's Deputy Political Editor. Simon, you have Trump news.
Bit of Trump news. We've got the first description from the President of the United States about the closed-door meeting that he's been having with the King. It was a really good meeting. He's a fantastic person. They're incredible people, and it's a real honour, the President of the United States said shortly after the King and Queen drove away from the White House to make their way up to Capitol Hill, where they are having those meetings with senior figures in Congress. That's being reported by the White House pool. I'm not sure whether we're going to get any kind of readout from the King's viewpoint of the conversation. But as you know, we will be hearing from him speaking shortly. By the way, I've checked into that passport. And according to Fox News, it's being rolled out in July. A State Department official has confirmed to Fox News Digital to coincide with the country's 250th birthday. The official also says the new design will be available for any American citizen who applies for a passport when the rollout happens, and will continue for as long as there is availability. What's not clear from this is whether you elect to get one of them, if you choose to get one of them, or whether they just send you whatever they send you and you get your new passport through the mail and it's got a picture of Donald Trump on the inside cover.
It would be really interesting to have a daily update of how many people actually choose
Well, that's the other thing, because if they don't elect, I mean, they say they're going to, availability will continue, the rollout will continue for as long as there is availability. There are circumstances under which perhaps availability could last for a long time.
Or is our Trump derangement syndrome setting
Who
in
knows?
yet
Who
again?
knows?
Because,
I mean, it's going to be a barometer.
But if you see, if it was Britain doing this, celebrating our, say, 1000th anniversary, I mean, you don't do 250s, I mean, we have a much longer history. I mean, we would have the head of state, i.e. the King, as sort of depicted in the passport, would we not? I mean, it wouldn't be unusual for that to happen. And he is not only the head of government, but the head of state.
Yes, but that is why this is you are trying to be kind, obviously, but that is why this is a republic, and it is a republic with a separation of powers, 3 co-equal branches of government, and a pretty voluble no kings movement, even on a day when America, and particularly if you saw the pictures from the British Embassy's garden party last night, astonishing pictures last night of Republicans, the people who are very much the original kind of no kings people, Republicans falling over themselves last night to get close to the King.
But everyone does. Wherever the king goes, wherever Trump goes, there'll be people trying to sort of edge their way into the conversation. I actually discovered a picture of myself and my partner the other day doing exactly that in a conversation with the king at Highgrove at an event we were at. He says name dropping. Nikki in Kent says, I do not identify with the United States and I reject any suggestion that our outlooks or interests are aligned. Well, you're wrong, Nikki. Recent remarks implying otherwise are misplaced. The direction of the current appalling administration only deepens that divide. My outlook, values and sense of alignment are firmly rooted in Europe. All that is going on in Washington is just political theatre and cringeworthy. What does the great Simon Marks think? Well, I was going to give you my opinion then, but you want Simon, so let him spout forth.
Well, I don't think it is all political theatre, because I think it is very important, actually, for the king to lay down a marker in this speech that he's going to be making in Congress. Because remember that J.D. Vance will be there, Marco Rubio will be there, both of them vying potentially to succeed Donald Trump atop the Republican Party. And remember, there will be all sorts of Democrats in there that might be thinking about running for the presidency in 2028. And to show up and say, look, these are actually the things we believe in. This is the nature of the bilateral relationship that we want. We believe in alliances. We believe in the vital importance of the United States remaining engaged in NATO, in European security infrastructure. We believe in the renewal of the special relationship. We'll see how many times he uses that word in this speech, having been told that it is coming, even if it has absolutely no impact on the bloke who's sitting right there in the building behind Iain, the bloke in the White House. Even if it has no impact on him, it may have a potential impact on the people who come after him. And if you look at Marco Rubio, a man, who had his own independent career in the Senate before he decided to throw his lot in with Donald Trump and become Secretary of State. The notion that someone like Marco Rubio is now beginning to say, we're going to have another look at NATO because of what has happened in Iran. I mean, he may not be as lost a cause as Donald Trump might be. And that's why I think this goes beyond political theatre and is genuinely quite important.
Now, we've just seen some images of the King sitting inside the Capitol building, the home of the US Congress, next to the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Mike Johnson. The British Foreign Secretary, Yvette Cooper, was sat opposite them too. So we've got around half an hour to go before the King addresses this joint session of Congress, both houses, the Senate and members of the House of Representatives. So 100 senators. It's 435, I think, members of the House of Representatives. They'll all be there. Lots of other dignitaries watching on as well. We're going to be bringing that live to you on LBC, not only in audio, but in vision. If you want to watch the whole programme, you can do so on Global Player, the LBC app, and the LBC YouTube channel. But first, let's get the latest news headlines on LBC with Matt Hewitt.
The King's expected to tell US lawmakers in the next hour that Britain's alliance with America is one of the greatest in human history. Charles is also expected to say our two countries have always found ways to come together in a nod to tensions between the nation's current leaders. Stay with us for the speech, live and in full here on LBC. MPs have voted against putting the Prime Minister through a sleaze investigation. Opposition parties say he misled them about how Lord Mandelson's recruitment was handled, but Number 10's called today's debate a stunt. And a murder investigation starting after a man was stabbed in the chest in Worcestershire. The 41-year-old was discovered in an underpass in Redditch at around 8:30 this morning. LBC weather, dry tonight with patchy frost and fog in the north, lows of 1 to 9 degrees.
This is LBC.
What's the best present you ever got for your birthday? I bet it wasn't as life-changing as £1 million. Every week with the birthday draw, there's £1 million to be won. And you can enter from as little as £1 or via post. Enter by midnight on Sunday and your special day could win you £1 million. Visit thebirthdaydraw.com. Is it your lucky day? From Global and ITV. 18 plus UK only, no purchase necessary.
The following is from TfL.
My name was Luna, like the moon. I was 2 days short of my 17th birthday when I was killed. My killer wasn't a bad man. He had a rescue dog called Frank and rang his mum every Sunday. He wasn't a speed freak. He just thought it was okay to go a few miles an hour over the limit. But that was enough to knock me off my bike. and kill me.
Speeding injures or kills over 1,000 people in London every year. Slow down. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Tesco Insurance are driving down the cost of motoring with 10% off car insurance. Take out a car insurance policy before the 15th of May 2026 and you'll get 10% off with Club Card prices. We offer a range of cover options, so you can choose the one that's right for you. Save 10% when you buy or renew a car policy with Tesco Insurance. Search Tesco Car Insurance and get a quote direct today. Club Card required. Excludes add-ons. T's and C's apply.
Iain Dale on LBC.
It's 7:36 on LBC. We will be crossing live to the. This is happening in the Senate, isn't it? Or is it?
It's happening in the House of Representatives.
In the House of Representatives,
yes.
So that they can all fit in that,
exactly.
Can't they? So, I mean, what's actually happening now, Simon? What's the King doing right now?
So, as far as I know, at the moment, he is engaged in this meeting with the Gang of Four, those four most senior figures in the United States Congress, two from the House of Representatives, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Mike Johnson, and Hakeem Jeffries, who leads the Democrats in the House of Representatives, and the Senate Majority Leader, John Thune, who of course is a Republican, and his opposite number, Senator Chuck Schumer, who leads the Democrats in the Senate. So this is an important opportunity for the King to make his some of the points that he will undoubtedly have made in that private meeting with President Trump. He'll have the opportunity to make the same points to congressional leaders, and we may actually find out more from that meeting than we hear from the meeting with the King directly, because members of Congress talk to one another and lips are a little bit looser than perhaps they might be coming out of the White House. I just wanted to make one more point about the Jeffrey Epstein issue, which we were talking about before. There is a heightened expectation that the King is going to say something during his speech about the victims of Jeffrey Epstein, which obviously has context because his brother, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, is facing calls from multiple members of Congress to cooperate with the House Oversight Committee's investigation into Epstein's crimes. And one of the most prominent members on that House Oversight Committee is Congressman Ro Khanna of California. And he has told Politico, and he's really laying down a marker in these comments, that he met with British Ambassador Sir Christian Turner, and he says the British ambassador has suggested that the King will acknowledge the Epstein survivors in his address to Congress today. And then Ro Khanna goes further and says, I hope his flunkies don't take out the acknowledgement from his text, and I fully expect the King to be acknowledging the survivors, the Epstein survivors, in his speech to our nation and Congress this afternoon. So Ro Khanna, in making those comments to Politico, is absolutely raising the stakes here for this speech, putting pressure on the King through this conversation he says that he had with Sir Christian Turner to say something about the Epstein victims that may not previously have been part of the King's planned remarks. And were the King now not to say anything about the Epstein survivors, I mean, that phrase that I hope his flunkies don't take out the acknowledgement from his text, things would start getting even punchier.
We should point out, we don't know whether this was in the original text or not. And let's also remember, this is not a speech that is written by the King. This is a speech that is written by the government, because he is there representing the government. Now, he will be able to tweak it. He might be able to add a few bits in. He might even be able to delete a few bits. That's how these things work. Coincidentally, Simon, we have a government minister on the line right now.
Splendid. Jake
Richards joins us, Labour Justice Minister and MP for Rotherham Valley. Jake, very good evening to you.
Good evening.
Jake, are you there?
Hello, I'm here.
Hi, good to talk to you. We'll come on to the domestic political events in a moment, but let's just talk a little bit about what's going to be happening in about 20 minutes' time. I think you heard what Simon said about the likelihood or not of the Epstein victims being mentioned in the King's speech. Can you give us any insight as to whether that might be happening or whether you think it should?
Well, to disappoint you, the writing of the King's speech is somewhat above my pay grade, Ian. But what I would say is, as the Prime Minister has said repeatedly, and indeed Darren Jones, the Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister in the House of Commons today, has said, when we are discussing whether it's the appointment of Mandelson and the issues regarding that, when we are discussing issues in general relating to Jeffrey Epstein, the victims of this horrific crimes must always be at the forefront of our minds. And I have no doubt that the King, as he visits America, as he makes public statements, will reiterate that. But of course, that is a matter for His Majesty.
Now, your new ambassador in Washington has said in these, should we say, rather injudicious comments to a group of students, if Labour does very badly, i.e. in May, I suspect the party will be able to go over the threshold and remove him. Seems to me to be the conventional thinking, talking about Keir Starmer. Do you agree with him?
No, I don't agree with him. I'm not sure what context he was making these remarks to school children a few months ago, but in any event, we are in the business of getting on with government. We have a lot of work to do, and I'm not for a minute telling your listeners and your viewers that we have made the progress we would have liked in the first 2 years in government. We are impatient for change, and there is a lot more work to do. And look, we are not the first government that will have, no doubt, difficult elections in mid-term. We have to listen to the electorate and learn from that. But the message I'm hearing when I'm knocking on doors across the country during this campaign is that people want the government to get on with delivering the change that we promised at the last general election, whether that be on the cost of living, whether that be immigration, and of course, increasingly, the global instability we see in the world, in the Middle East, in Russia, and indeed our relationship with the United States and indeed other global powers too. So I'm focused in my ministerial role on getting on in delivering change. I know the Prime Minister is as well.
But it's very difficult to do that, isn't it? When you have these Foreign Affairs Select Committee hearings today with Morgan McSweeney and Sir Philip Norton, you then have this 6-hour debate in the House of Commons as to whether the Prime Minister should be referred to the Privileges Committee. I mean, plus all of this stuff with Christian Turner. I mean, it's very embarrassing for your government, isn't it? I mean, be candid, it's all going a bit wrong, isn't it?
Well, I think there's two issues there, Ian. The first is there are very legitimate questions about the appointment of Mandelson, how that happened, the vetting process that we have been focused on over the last few weeks. And I think it's right that Parliament and independent parliamentary processes are underway to make sure that we get to the bottom of that. We get all the documents and information that we need so that all the questions the public rightly have are answered. But what we saw today and this afternoon was the Conservative Party attempting to turn that issue into a political fiasco. And Parliament simply said no.
Just like you did with Boris Johnson in the same kind of
absolutely
arena.
Not. Comparing Boris Johnson and him saying things to Parliament when it was later proven by the police and by a criminal investigation that he had lied to Parliament is wholly different to the debate we had this afternoon. And I was in the House of Commons this afternoon, and Conservative MP after Conservative MP stood up and didn't even speak to the motion in which we were voting on. They were speaking about all their conspiracy theories and anger at the Prime Minister about this and that, but not about the motion that we were voting on. It was a distraction.
Well, I don't know if we
it
were
was a
watching
fiasco.
the same debate, but I mean, I watched quite a bit of that debate, and there were various Conservative MPs who did actually address the motion. And you cannot possibly say that there isn't a case for referral when it is quite evident that the Prime Minister did mislead the House of Commons on several occasions, and yet won't effectively, I mean, if he was doing his job properly, surely he should have referred himself. If he's got nothing to fear, why wouldn't he refer himself rather than whip Labour MPs like sheep into the voting lobbies to make sure that it wasn't referred?
Ian, I don't accept that at all.
I mean, whatever you say about Boris Johnson, he did actually, he didn't put it to a vote. He let himself be referred.
That was because he'd been found guilty by the police and given a fixed penalty notice and in a criminal investigation. I mean, it would have been absurd for him to whip MPs to go against what the police had found, that he had been lying to the House of Commons. Now, look, the Privileges Committee is a profound and important part of our constitution and indeed our parliamentary process. It should not be utilised whenever any political opponents simply fancy it. And that is what the Conservative case was today. It was purely fanciful. There was no evidence to suggest that there was no evidence to suggest that the Prime Minister had
all the other opposition parties lined up with the Conservatives, along with 15 of your own MPs who actually had the bravery to vote against the Labour whip, to do it. It wasn't just a Conservative stunt, was it, Jake?
Ian, it's not a surprise when you note that in 9 days' time we have elections. What first attracted the opposition parties to a motion to try and cause political embarrassment to the Prime Minister 9 days before local elections? Well, I think the answer is in the question. This was a political stunt, which the Liberal Democrats joined, the Greens joined, Reform joined, no doubt, because they are fighting elections across the country too. It has absolutely no coherence and no credibility, and it's right that Parliament rejected it. We should not undermine important parliamentary procedures like the Privileges Committee, and it's right that we didn't today.
Well, that's exactly what your government did today by putting a 3-line whip on your MPs. This is a parliamentary occasion, not a government occasion. And in my view, your government has acted disgracefully today by putting a whip on Labour MPs to vote in that way. So your basic premise here is move along, nothing to see. Do you really think the electorate are going to buy that?
That is completely contrary to what my approach is. This morning, we had 4 hours of oral evidence from the former Chief of Staff on this issue. We had the former Permanent Secretary at the Foreign Office. Last week, we had the former Permanent Secretary at the Foreign Office.
Both undermined the Prime Minister's position.
I don't agree with that characterisation of their evidence at all. We have a humble address which will be delivering and disclosing hundreds of thousands of pages of documents over the next few weeks and months.
I'm sorry, but Sir Philip Barton made very, very clear that pressure had been put on him by Number 10 to get this done quickly, contrary to what the Prime Minister told the House of Commons.
No, Ian,
what part of that have I got wrong?
That's absolutely not correct. What we accept, and indeed, Ian, let me finish.
I was watching him.
Ian, let me finish. What Darren Jones said on this exact point, and he's completely right in the House of Commons today, it is right. It is incumbent upon ministers to put pressure on the civil service to deliver priorities. What the pressure we were not putting on is for them to act recklessly in regards to vetting or indeed any other part of that procedure. And we never did, and there's no evidence to suggest that. And the Prime Minister
did not make that differentiation in the House of Commons last week.
Well, I don't accept
Jake,
that.
Thank you. We have to finish here because we're about to get the speech by the King in the chamber of the House of Representatives. Thank you very much for joining us. That's Jake Richards, Labour's Justice Minister and MP for Rother Valley. Simon, tell us what's going on.
Well, the members of the House of Representatives and the Senate are gathering. We can show you those pictures live from the US House of Representatives. We've been watching over the last few minutes as the 435 members of the House and the 100 members of the Senate have been arriving in the chamber. There are still some empty seats, bit of time for people to continue making their way into the chamber. Interesting images, lots of images of members of the Senate embracing members of the House of Representatives, some of them cross-party embraces, and that of course is partly due to the fact that, you know, if you're in the Senate you don't often get to see the folks from the House of Representatives because they work obviously in different chambers. But there is, it would appear from all of these pictures, an air not just of tremendous expectation, but I think also excitement and you know, real smiles and a sense on the faces of many of these lawmakers that they are about to witness something rather special up on Capitol Hill. So we will, Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, is gavelling the session to order. We are not far away from the King's speech to this joint session of Congress.
So the format here is the King will walk in. Now, is it going to be like a State of the Union where everyone gets up and is cheering and
absolutely
sort of rah, 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 or will it be a little bit more polite?
I think it will be full of cheering, as opposed to the State of the Union where half the chamber, particularly in recent years, has absolutely sat on its hands when the President of the United States has walked in and made speeches. So I think there's a real opportunity to see a unified stance here. Mike Johnson currently explaining explaining the purpose of this joint session of Congress. He is, of course, flanked by Vice President J.D. Vance in his capacity as President of the Senate. President Trump today at the White House extemporized during the remarks that he made when the King's official arrival took place along with the Queen, and said that he was really hoping that he could attend this joint session of Congress to watch the King's speech. He said he was very interested in watching it and would love to be there in person, but recognised that because Congress is a co-equal branch of government, he couldn't travel to Capitol Hill to watch the speech. But Vice President J.D. Vance is there, his witness to this particular piece of history, as I say, in his capacity as President of the Senate, along with lawmakers from both chambers, both parties, and I think a real air of expectation about this joint address to Congress, which of course is the King's first opportunity as monarch, and he's not made an address to a joint session of Congress previously, his first opportunity publicly to make it clear what issues he believes underpin the bilateral relationship between the United States and the UK, and whether and in what fashion that relationship can be propelled back down a special path, if that is indeed possible.
Now, before, I don't know how long all of this sort of pre-speech stuff is going to take, because we are still 9 minutes away from when the King is scheduled to speak. So in that period, let's have a word with a Democratic strategist, Joel Rubin, who joins me now. He's a political commentator who was Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Legislative Affairs in the Obama administration. Joel, very good evening to you. What do you expect from His Majesty when he addresses Congress today? And maybe at the state banquet later, what do you expect Donald Trump to say?
Well, Ian, it's great to be with you. And I do think we'll see everybody on their best behavior. There's a lot of cultural kinship between Britain and the United States. And also, quite frankly, both, Americans and British want this to be a positive visit. So the King, look, he has a positive reputation in the United States. I don't think Americans really know a lot about him. We've seen him from a distance, and of course, throughout the years as the Prince. And so it will be a bit of an opening for him to explain to the American people about who he is and his vision for the world and, of course, for Great Britain. But I think that everybody in the United States is very respectful of this and interested in hearing what he says.
How do you think the relationship between our two countries has changed since the Obama administration?
Yeah, it's a great question. Look, during the Obama administration, when I served in legislative affairs, the relationship was during Brexit at that time, and there was a lot of tension, a lot of questions about what the vote would mean, and of course the Obama team was not very excited about where that was heading either. And then you fast forward that a number of years, and there's been a lot of tensions over trade issues in particular. Now, President Trump and Keir Starmer kind of buried that a little bit about a year ago with the first trade deal after President Trump announced new tariffs. But I think that there's still a wondering about what is the future of this relationship in terms of policy. I have to add, though, earlier in my career, I served in the Bush administration as a civil servant at the State Department, and back then the connection with Great Britain in particular over Afghanistan was very tight. A lot of gratitude to the British for the kind of support they provided after September 11th here. And so I think there's just a deep reservoir of affinity, despite these ups and downs on the daily political questions.
And do you think that this state visit marks an opportunity for a reset? Or do you think that President Trump, given his personality, is not really going to differentiate between the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, who he has, what should we say, a difficult relationship with at the moment, and the head of state, the King? Because obviously President Trump is effectively both Prime Minister and head of state of the United States.
Well, Ian, what's very interesting about this and about this president as well is he does merge the personal and the political in a way that many, in fact, most American presidents have not, where he really personalizes how he is treated by a foreign leader. And in many ways, the king gets away with one here because he has no real governing responsibility. So he can just have a great relationship with Donald Trump, and Donald Trump can have a great relationship with him and feel good about it. And that's it. Nothing is going to pollute it underneath. Ironically, I think President Trump, or maybe, he liked Keir Starmer. He would publicly say that quite often for a significant amount of time. I like Keir. But he's very upset about the policy decisions in recent days and the criticism about the war in Iran. I don't think the king's going to get sucked into that. In many ways, the king's presence here and that affinity between the two men, as we've seen, will help to maintain the relationship overall. But that doesn't necessarily mean that Keir Starmer is going to get a pass on his policy position differences from the United States.
I think we can all agree on that one. Joel, thank you very much indeed. That's Joel Rubin there, a Democratic strategist, served in the Obama and, as we just learned, George W. Bush administrations. Simon, do you think that this is a real opportunity for a reset here? And that's how this speech has been crafted by the government to try and promote the whole concept of a reset?
I think it is very hard to imagine a set of circumstances under which a real, meaningful, full reset in this relationship can take place, because we know so much now about the fundamental character of President Donald Trump. And if you look back at the second state visit to the UK last year, it was moments after he departed British airspace, having made toasts and expressed the notion, speaking in almost poetic terms for him at Windsor about the nature of the relationship between the US and the UK, two chords from the same song or whatever that phrase was that was used. And it all disappeared within a matter of days in anger and recrimination.
Are you actually Mark in Golders Green? Because Mark has just sent in a text saying exactly what you've just said. He says, I think we all know deep down that whatever happens tonight is irrelevant. Once Trump has received the full honour and the King returns, he will return to trashing the UK. He did the same straight after his state visit to the UK, behaved until the full honour was received, and then started over.
Well, I think Mark is right in expecting that kind of series of events here. I mean, it's lovely to be basking in the reflective glory of all of this, and we are about to watch the most significant speech that has been made on Capitol Hill in generations regarding the British and American relationship. And it will absolutely lay down a marker for the future. I'm just not sure it's going to lay down a marker for the immediate future because of the fundamental character, as Mark is alluding to there in that text of Donald Trump, who, without question, within the course of the next few days, will be back on Truth Social or talking to some of the propagandists in the White House briefing room, are going to ask him if the royal visit has changed anything about the nature of his relationship with Sir Keir Starmer. Does he regret having launched some of the attacks that he's made on the Prime Minister over the course of the last few weeks and months? And if you know anything about Donald Trump, you know that he's not going to concede mistakes. He's not going to apologise. He will eventually double down, whether it happens this weekend or next month. That is coming, because you can't put the genie fully back in the bottle.
Now, we've been looking at pictures of Donald Trump's cabinet walking into the auditorium. What's it called? The chamber.
The chamber of the House of Representatives.
Walking into the chamber. And everybody's still sort of waiting for what happens next. We're literally 2 minutes away from when we're expecting the King to be introduced. I have an apology to make, Simon, particularly to Rachel Johnson, who's just texted me to say that I said earlier the King was sat. She says, Ian, with 4 exclamation marks. Despite that utter solecism, a great listen, she says.
4 exclamation marks from Rachel. That's trouble.
I blame it on my bog standard comprehensive school education. I do apologise.
I'll work him over, Rachel.
So they're all standing. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, this is so different from watching the House of Commons, isn't it? Because they're literally just sort of standing around, having a little chat to each other, waiting for the big moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think they will, many of them, take their seats. But if this is like the State of the Union address, and I think it will be, what you're going to see is King Charles introduced from the top of the stairs there and led through the chamber, and there will be people craning their necks and jamming the aisle in an effort.
Be backslapping as he walks down the aisle?
I don't know. I mean, it'd be interesting to see if that's the way they bring him in. I forget in these state visits exactly.
You're not supposed to touch the monarch, are you?
You're not. But I think it will be very interesting to see how exactly that works. I wonder if they're going to bring him in from one of the side entrances. I forget from previous joint addresses precisely how this is all choreographed. But look, there is an air of expectation in that chamber. It is now here in the United States 3:00 in the afternoon. We were told that this speech was going to get underway right around now. You can see members of Congress, members of the military. I think there's at least one Supreme Court justice in the room, and many members of President Trump's cabinet present for this address. They are all absolutely waiting for the King's arrival. The Queen also will be there watching this speech, and President Trump, as I was saying earlier, certainly evinced considerable interest in what the King is going to say in this address, so one wonders whether he's going to be watching it on the TV in the Oval Office. How closely he will be following what the King has to say is, of course, not necessarily completely synchronous with how closely he acts on the things that the King recommends. Time and again, our two countries have always found ways to come together, is one phrase that we have been told to expect in this speech, and certainly that is aspirational in terms of the future, but it's going to rely on President Trump absolutely to ignite an effort to bring the US and the UK back together, given the nature of the deep divisions that we're seeing there. Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana, not a member of the iconic Kennedy clan, but a man who has been a persistent critic of Keir Starmer very publicly in the United States Senate, even though he was a Rhodes Scholar and was educated in London. But he's definitely one of the British government's most prominent problems on Capitol Hill, and there are many others, which again takes us back to that issue of why it's important for the King to be making this speech. This is not a speech for an audience of one. I mean, it's certainly a speech that is going to be directed partly at Donald Trump, but it is genuinely a speech that he's making to a whole raft of politicians on both sides of the aisle here, some of whom have been relentlessly critical of the UK. Sir Keir Starmer, Sir Sadiq Khan, the notion of integration in the UK, with many on the Republican right faulting the Starmer administration for its handling of immigration, and also some parroting Donald Trump's argument that the British government ought to be engaging in drill, baby drill, when it comes to North Sea oil.
A penny for Keir Starmer's thoughts at the moment, because he will be watching these pictures, hopefully on Global Player, and I wonder what's going through his head, because I mean, he's had a pretty awful day, let's face it, given the domestic circumstances. I mean, I'm not going to suggest that this speech might be a little bit of light relief for him, but he will know exactly what the King is about to say. I don't think he will have written the speech himself, but he will have had a contribution to it. And it is one of those landmarks in any premiership when there is an important state visit. Of course, prime ministers have spoken to joint sessions of Congress in the past. Tony Blair certainly did. Did Gordon Brown? I'm not sure I remember him doing one. Margaret Thatcher certainly did. And it is a real recognition, I think, of a foreign dignitary. And not all foreign heads of state get to do this. I mean, we saw the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. He's done it at least a couple of times.
Twice.
I think.
Possibly 3 times.
Yeah.
Very controversially, of course.
Well, indeed. And I mean, this is not expected to be a controversial speech. Everyone will be reading the runes, reading between the lines, trying to possibly overinterpret it. Obviously, we're not going to fall into that trap, Simon.
Heavens, no.
No, perish the thought.
I mean, I have no idea what's going through Keir Starmer's mind, obviously, but it would be reasonable for the Prime Minister generally and privately to be deeply frustrated that at every turn over the course of the last 14, 15 months, his government has been upended by Donald Trump. Upended by Donald Trump in terms of the Liberation Day tariffs that, of course, have now been struck down by the US Supreme Court. Upended by disagreements over the war in Iran. Upended by a whole variety of different issues, including the president's determination that the government is making a huge mistake by embracing its net zero goals. The entire strategy of Ed Miliband at the Department of Energy completely rejected by the Trump administration, who actively are rolling back environmental protections here in the United States on almost a weekly basis, as President Trump really ignites additional drilling for oil opportunities onshore and off America's coastline. The king, with a lengthy track record. I mean, a man who was talking about climate change before most of us even had a notion as to what that was all about, is not likely to be able to find common cause ever with Donald Trump on those issues. But also, this is an American government. And the Republican Party generally now, particularly Make America Great Again supporters, traffic constantly in anti-London rhetoric. Absolutely going after Sir Sadiq Khan, deep personal animus between the Mayor of London and the American president, but also criticising everything that London stands for with the president. Let's see what's happening.
Right, let's cross live to the House of Representatives chamber.
Here they are. I think that was the announcement that their Majesties are about to enter the chamber, and they are coming exactly the way that the president arrives when he makes his State of the Union address. Everyone's on best behaviour. No backslapping. They must have all been told. No touching. Handshake there for someone didn't quite catch who that was. Doug Burgum, the Interior Secretary there, shaking the King's hand and the Queen's. We're seeing there members of the Supreme Court and the military shaking the King's hand as he arrives on the floor of the House of Representatives to make this massively important speech, climbing up the dais. I think convention would suggest he will hand a copy of his speech to both Vice President J.D. Vance and the Speaker of the House of Representatives, whom he greets there, the Queen by his side. Not sure whether he's required to hand them a copy of the speech or whether it will be furnished afterwards. At the State of the Union address, the President is also always required to hand a copy of his speech over to them for the congressional record. But the King now soaking up polite applause. It's not riotous applause. I think there is a sense of etiquette that is being observed in the chamber with regards to the presence of their Majesties. Queen Camilla standing just to the King's side as he prepares to make this speech.
Interestingly, in a dress that I would say that Melania could have worn.
Well, they were both, as our colleague
stylish.
Sheila Fogarty was pointing out on the air earlier today. They have both been colour coordinated today, both dressed in cream. I'm not the best person to commentate on royal fashion, but certainly it looks terrific.
And this applause is going on for quite some time now, isn't it?
Yep, I mean, we're probably into the second minute of it at this point, as the King waits for it to die down and begin what I think we could argue, and Iain certainly has been arguing, is the most important speech of his reign so far. Certainly a speech of absolutely vital importance in terms of the future of the bilateral relationship between the United States and the UK. Here we go.
members of Congress, representatives of the American people across all states, territories, cities, and communities. I would like, if I may, to take this opportunity to express my particular gratitude to you all for the great honor of addressing this joint meeting of Congress, and on behalf of the Queen and myself, to thank the American people for welcoming us to the United States to mark this semi-quincentennial year of the Declaration of Independence. And for all of that time, aren't you lucky? And for all of that time, our destinies as nations have been interlinked. As Oscar Wilde said, we have really everything in common with America nowadays, except, of course, language. So, ladies and gentlemen, we meet in times of great uncertainty, in times of conflict from Europe to the Middle East, which pose immense challenges for the international community and whose impact is felt in communities the length and breadth of our own countries. We meet, too, in the aftermath of the incident not far from this great building that sought to harm the leadership of your nation and to foment wider fear and discord. Let me say with unshakable resolve, such acts of violence will never succeed. Whatever our differences, whatever disagreements we may have, we stand united in our commitment to uphold democracy, to protect all our people from harm, and to salute the courage of those who daily risk their lives in the service of our countries. Standing here today, it is hard not to feel the weight of history on my shoulder, because the modern relationship between our two nations and our own peoples spans not merely 250 years, but over 4 centuries. It is extraordinary to think that I am the 19th in our line of sovereigns to study with daily attention the affairs of America. So I come here today with the highest respect for the United States Congress, this citadel of democracy created to represent the voice of all American people to advance sacred rights and freedoms. Speaking in this renowned chamber of debate and deliberation, I cannot help but think of my late mother, Queen Elizabeth, who in 1991 was also afforded this signal honor and similarly spoke under the watchful eye of the Statue of Freedom above us. Today, I am here on this great occasion in the life of our nations to express the highest regard and friendship of the British people to the people of the United States. Now, as you may know, when I address my own Parliament at Westminster, we still follow an age-old tradition and take a Member of Parliament hostage, holding him or her at Buckingham Palace until I am safely returned. These days, we look after our guests rather well, to the point that they often do not want to leave. don't know, Mr. Speaker, if there were any volunteers for that role here today. As I look back across the centuries, Mr. Speaker, there emerge certain patterns, certain self-evident truths from which we can learn and draw mutual strength. With the spirit of 1776 in our minds, we can perhaps agree that we do not always agree, at least in the first instance. Indeed, the very principle on which your Congress was founded, no taxation without representation, was at once a fundamental disagreement between us, and at the same time a shared democratic value which you inherited from us. Ours is a partnership born out of dispute, but no less strong for it. So perhaps in this example, we can discern that our nations are in fact instinctively like-minded, a product of the common democratic, legal, and social traditions in which our governance is rooted to this day. Drawing on these values and traditions, time and again, our two countries have always found ways to come together. And by Jove, Mr. Speaker, when we have found that way to agree, what great change is brought about, not just for the benefit of our peoples, but of all peoples. This, I believe, is the special ingredient in our relationship. As President Trump himself observed during his state visit to Britain last autumn, the bond of kinship and identity between America and the United Kingdom is priceless and eternal. It is irreplaceable and unbreakable. Mr. Speaker, this is by no means my first visit to Washington, D.C., the capital of this great republic. It is, in fact, my 20th visit to the United States and my first as King and head of the Commonwealth. This is a city which symbolizes a period in our shared history, or what Charles Dickens might have called a tale of two Georges. The first president, George Washington, and my 5 times great-grandfather, King George III. King George, as you know, never set foot in America, and please rest assured, ladies and gentlemen, I am not here as part of some cunning rearguard action. The founding fathers were bold and imaginative rebels with a cause. 250 years ago, or as we say in the United Kingdom, just the other day, they declared independence. By balancing contending forces and drawing strength into diversity, they united 13 disparate colonies to forge a nation on the revolutionary idea of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. They carried with them and carried forward the great inheritance of the British Enlightenment, as well as the ideals which had an even deeper history in English common law and Magna Carta. These roots run deep, and they are still vital. Our Declaration of Rights of 1689 was not only the foundation of our constitutional monarchy, but also provided the source of so many of the principles reiterated, often verbatim, in the American Bill of Rights of 1791. And those roots go even further back in history. The US Supreme Court Historical Society has calculated that Magna Carta is cited in at least 160 Supreme Court cases since 1789, not least as the foundation of the principle that executive power is subject to checks and balances. This is the reason why there stands a stone by the River Thames at Runnymede, where Magna Carta was signed in the year 1215. This stone records that an acre of that ancient and historic site was given to the United States of America by the people of the United Kingdom to symbolize our shared resolve in support of liberty and in memory of President John F. Kennedy. Distinguished members of the 119th Congress, it is here in these very halls that this spirit of liberty and the promise of America's founders is present in every session and every vote cast, not by the will of one, but by the deliberation of many, representing the living mosaic of the United States. In both of our countries, it is the very fact of our vibrant, diverse, and free societies that gives us our collective strength, including to support victims of some of the ills that so tragically exist in both our societies today. And, Mr. Speaker, for many here, and for myself, the Christian faith is a firm anchor and daily inspiration that guides us, not only personally, that guides us not only personally, but together as members of our community. Having devoted a large part of my life to interfaith relationships and greater understanding, it is that faith in the triumph of light over darkness which I have found confirmed countless times. Through it, I am inspired by the profound respect that develops as people of different faiths grow in their understanding of each other. It is why, it is my hope, my prayer, that in these turbulent times, working together and with our international partners, we can stem the beating of plowshares into swords. I am mindful that we are still in the season of Easter, the season that most strengthens my hope. It is why I believe with all my heart that the essence of our two nations is a generosity of spirit and a duty to foster compassion, to promote peace, to deepen mutual understanding, and to value all people of all faiths and of none. The alliance that our two nations have built over the centuries, and for which we are profoundly grateful to the American people, is truly unique. And that alliance is part of what Henry Kissinger described as Kennedy's soaring vision of an Atlantic partnership based on twin pillars, Europe and America. That partnership, I believe, Mr. Speaker, is more important today than it has ever been. The first reigning British sovereign to set foot in America was my grandfather, King George VI. He visited in 1939 with my beloved grandmother, Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. The forces of fascism in Europe were on the march, and sometime before the United States had joined us in the defense of freedom, our shared values prevailed. Today, we find ourselves in a new era, but those values remain. It is an era that is in many ways more volatile and more dangerous than the world to which my late mother spoke in this chamber in 1991. The challenges we face are too great for any one nation to bear alone. But in this unpredictable environment, our alliance cannot rest on past achievements or assume that foundational principles simply endure. As my Prime Minister said last month, ours is an indispensable partnership. We must not disregard everything that has sustained us for the last 80 years. Instead, we must build on it. Renewal today starts with security. The United Kingdom recognizes that the threats we face demand a transformation in British defence. That is why our country, in order to be fit for the future, has committed to the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the Cold War, during part of which, over 50 years ago, I served with immense pride in the Royal Navy, following in the naval footsteps of my father, Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, my grandfather, King George VI, my great-uncle, Lord Mountbatten, and my great-grandfather, King George V. This year, of course, also marks the 25th anniversary of 9/11. This atrocity was a defining moment for America, and your pain and shock were felt around the whole world. During my visit to New York, my wife and I will again pay our respects to the victims, the families, and the bravery shown in the face of terrible loss. We stood with you then, and we stand with you now in solemn remembrance of a day that shall never be forgotten. In the immediate aftermath of 9/11, when NATO invoked Article 5 for the first time, and the United Nations Security Council was united in the face of terror, we answered the call together, as our people have done so for more than a century, shoulder to shoulder through 2 world wars, the Cold War, Afghanistan, and moments that have defined our shared security. Today, Mr. Speaker, that same unyielding resolve is needed for the defence of Ukraine and her most courageous people. It is needed in order to secure a truly just and lasting peace. From the depths of the Atlantic to the disastrously melting ice caps of the Arctic, the commitment and expertise of the United States Armed Forces and its allies lie at the heart of NATO, pledged to each other's defense, protecting our citizens and interests, keeping North Americans and Europeans safe from our common adversaries. Our defense, intelligence, and security ties are hardwired together through relationships measured not in years, but in decades. Today, thousands of US service personnel, defense officials and their families are stationed in the United Kingdom as British personnel serve with equal pride across 30 American states. We are building F-35s together, and we have agreed the most ambitious submarine program in history, AUKUS. And we are doing it in partnership with Australia, a country of which I'm also immensely proud to serve as sovereign. We do not embark on these remarkable endeavours together out of sentiment. We do so because they build greater shared resilience for the future, so making our citizens safer for generations to come. Our common ideals were not only crucial for liberty and equality, they are also the foundation of our shared prosperity. The rule of law, the certainty of stable and accessible rules, an independent judiciary resolving disputes and delivering impartial justice. These features created the conditions for centuries of unmatched economic growth in our two countries. This is why our governments are concluding new economic and technology agreements to write the next chapter of our joint prosperity and ensure that British and American ingenuity continues to lead the world. Our nations are combining talent and resources in the technologies of tomorrow. Our new partnerships in nuclear fusion and quantum computing and in AI and drug discovery, holding the promise of saving countless lives. More broadly, we celebrate the $430 billion in annual trade that continues to grow, the $1.7 trillion in mutual investment that fuels that innovation, and the millions of jobs on both sides of the Atlantic, supported across both economies. These are strong foundations on which to continue to build for generations yet unborn. Our ties in education, research, and cultural exchange empower citizens and future leaders of both countries. The Marshall Scholarship, named after the great General George Marshall, and the association of which I am so proud to be patron, are emblematic of the connection between our two countries. Since its founding, more than 2,300 scholarships have been awarded, opening doors for Americans from all walks of life to study at the United Kingdom's leading universities. So as we look toward the next 250 years, we must also reflect on our shared responsibility to safeguard nature, our most precious and irreplaceable asset. Millennia before our nations existed, before any border drawn, the mountains of Scotland and Appalachia were one, a single continuous range forged in the ancient collision of continents. The natural wonders of the United States of America are indeed a unique asset, and generations of Americans have risen to this calling. Indigenous, political, and civic leaders, people in rural communities and cities alike, have all helped to protect and nurture what President Theodore Roosevelt called the glorious heritage of this land's extraordinary natural splendor, on which so much of its prosperity has always depended. Yet, even as we celebrate the beauty that surrounds us, our generation must decide how to address the collapse of critical natural systems, which threatens far more than the harmony and essential diversity of nature. We ignore at our peril the fact that these natural systems, in other words, nature's own economy, provide the foundation for our prosperity and our national security. The story of the United Kingdom and the United States is at its heart a story of reconciliation, renewal, and remarkable partnership. From the bitter divisions of 250 years ago, we forged a friendship that has grown into one of the most consequential alliances in human history. I pray with all my heart that our alliance will continue to defend our shared values with our partners in Europe and the Commonwealth and across the world. And that we ignore the clarion calls to become ever more inward-looking. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Vice President, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, America's words carry weight and meaning, as they have since independence. The actions of this great nation matter even more. President Lincoln understood this so well with his reflection in the magisterial Gettysburg Address, that the world may little note what we say, but will never forget what we do. And so to the United States of America, on your 250th birthday, let our two countries rededicate ourselves to each other in the selfless service of our peoples and of all the peoples of the world. God bless the United States, and God bless the United Kingdom.
Well, that was a speech by King Charles III, which lasted for a little under half an hour. I counted 8 standing ovations. I don't know whether you were counting them as well, Simon, but speech quite well received. I thought slightly hesitatingly delivered at times, but some very, very interesting things that he said there, particularly that conclusion. The world may note what we say, and then I didn't get the last word about what we do. Did you know
America's words carry weight and meaning. Actions matter even more. And then quoting Lincoln from the Gettysburg Address, the world will little remember what we say, but will remember what we do.
Well, if that isn't a direct...
I mean, I thought it was an extraordinarily carefully crafted and well-delivered speech. There were a couple of moments where the King seemed to be trying to find his way on his pages, but we got past all of that. But I think the most important aspect of this speech was that this was a message that the UK, first of all, believes in facts. This was a fact-based speech and a reminder to America's political class and, of course, to the man possibly watching from the Oval Office, and we'll talk in a second about the White House reaction to what's been going on, a reminder to the President of the United States that you can't simply make stuff up all the time. This was a reminder that facts matter, alliances matter, and there were various elements of this speech that were clearly designed to send a very, very clear message to the President of the United States about the values of Britain and the values of our society. He spoke right at the beginning about whatever disagreements we may have, we are united in our determination to protect democracy. Remember that he's speaking in a building that was ransacked by President Trump's supporters as they sought to overturn democracy on January the 6th, 2021. The King and the Queen now making their way, of course, out of the chamber and receiving warm applause. He went on to say that in the spirit of 1776, we can perhaps agree that we do not always agree, and citing the very birth of this nation, which was built around this expression, this phrase, no taxation without representation. The American settlers were complaining that they were being taxed by the king, but they were getting no representation democratically in the UK. The king there saying that this was a partnership between the US and the UK that was born out of dispute. He went on to insist that roots of the partnership run deep, and the particularly affecting section of that speech, I think, is where he was talking about the Magna Carta, saying that it's cited in at least 100 Supreme Court cases, many of which cite the Magna Carta's foundational principle that executive power is subject to checks and balances. We are in a city where the executive, President Donald Trump, is constantly riding roughshod over those checks and balances. There was a glancing reference obliquely to the Jeffrey Epstein scandals. He said that in both countries there is a need to address some of the ills that so tragically exist in our own societies today. That's as close as we got, I think, to an oblique reference to the Jeffrey Epstein scandal. That will not satisfy some members of Congress. But then a real determination to push back against the more muscular aspects of Donald Trump's foreign and international policy. Working together with our international partners, we can stem the beating of plowshares into swords. The alliance between the US and the UK is truly unique. He cited John F. Kennedy's soaring vision of an Atlantic partnership based on twin pillars. He said that it was more important today than it has ever been. So I think that this was a real effort by the King to send a vigorous message to President Trump that this alliance is vital to save, vital to salvage, and that the UK is determined to continue pursuing an entirely fact-based approach to the problems that exist in the world at a time when the government here is not.
Well, lots of text coming in from you. We'll come to calls as well over the course of the next 20 or 30 minutes. So do get your calls in, getting your reaction to what the King has said to this joint session of Congress. 0345 6060 973. Well, I'm delighted to be joined by the former acting US ambassador to the UK from 2021 to 2022 and former acting US Assistant Secretary of State for European and Eurasian Affairs, Philip T. Rieker. Ambassador, thank you very much for joining us. Now, the King had a tightrope to walk in many ways. What's your reaction?
I think it was an absolutely marvelous speech. I had an opportunity during my time in London to get to know the King, who was, of course, then Prince of Wales, a little bit, and was always impressed by his graciousness, his true interest in the United States. And he knows our country very well, having been here 20 times, but having studied it. And he brought out those messages again, dealing with these tightrope issues that have been the focus of a lot of press discussion, certainly in the last couple of days, but also addressing I think the broader issues, reminding the American people, as much as his subjects, shall we say, in the United Kingdom or in other parts of the Commonwealth, of what is important in the United States, our constitutional system, the checks and balances. He was speaking to Congress. He was addressing the members of the Supreme Court who were invited, and they're listening to his remarks as well. Tripartite government, that's important. Checks on the executive, he brought that up. But he also managed to put in references, of course, to the environment, to climate, to things that were important to him, the historic context, and again, going back to those critical lines, whatever our differences and our disagreements, we have a commitment to democracy, and we salute the courage and the weight of history.
During the speech, the White House tweeted out a picture of Donald Trump and King Charles together with the caption, "Two Kings," and then with a crown emoji. What do you make of that? I think it's quite an astonishing thing to do.
I would say, too, it's a little bit embarrassing. I think that's, again, a political dig trying to go after the so-called No Kings movement. There is a king of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and a sovereign of domains beyond, of course, whether that's Canada, our closest neighbor to the north, Australia, and other nations. We don't have a king in the United States, and of course, as the king himself referenced, 250 years ago, that was a major focus of his remarks. The United States, these different colonies came together, took up arms, in fact, and declared independence from that king, his 5 times great-grandfather. So I think, we need to stick to the non-political side of it. It shows you that the White House, of course, represents both the head of state and the head of government, and government is inherently political. This occasion is about state-to-state relations, and frankly, as the king made so clear, about the future of our shared globe.
Do you not think, though, that the king was being perhaps a little bit more political than many of us thought he would be? Now, admittedly, the speech was written primarily by the government, but there were some pretty direct messages. You don't have to overinterpret it to realise that there were some direct messages to Donald Trump. How do you think he's going to react to that when he gets up in the White House at the state banquet later this evening and makes his speech?
My guess is that the president, who does respect the king, and that was clear in his remarks earlier and the welcome that he and the First Lady have given the king and queen, that he will choose to go with the flow and the positive tone of all of this about our two great nations. He's always said, his mother was, of course, British, coming from Scotland, and had a great respect for the crown, and he learned that growing up. And I think that tone they will continue. They'll use other elements of this in, again, the political banter, whether it's culture wars or other things. That's part of our country right now. I think it was very wise of the king to sort of talk about coming together, his references to the Gettysburg Address and rededicating ourselves to the propositions there. Also mentioning, that our words carry weight and meaning, our actions and what we do will be what history truly remembers. And I think we have to keep that in mind. But underscoring, the roots of our country in the British Enlightenment, the English common law, the Magna Carta, all of these things, I think were extremely good. And there's room in there to interpret as you want. Had the king not addressed certain things, had the speech not made oblique references, then I think we would be commenting on that fact. So overall, I think this was a marvelous moment to, rededicate ourselves and certainly remember the strength of this very enduring relationship, this partnership that grew out of, frankly, a revolution.
There is a possibility, though, that the president might do a similar thing that he did after his state visit to our country, where it all went terribly well, he was terribly pleased with it, and then within 24 hours was slagging our country off. Do you think there's a danger that will happen here too?
I suspect it's very possible. I remember commenting on that at the time, and the very inappropriate, sort of contemptuous remarks about Allied soldiers, including the British, that fly in the face of facts. We talked earlier in your program about facts. This was a speech full of facts and the importance of facts, and reminding people that facts exist. And history exists. It needs to be studied. It needs to be learned. And there's, frankly, no one better to tell us that than King Charles III, who is a living embodiment of so much history, but studied history himself at Cambridge.
Thank you so much for joining us, Ambassador. That's former Ambassador to the UK, Philip T. Rieker. Right, we're going to come to your calls and your texts. Lots and lots and lots of texts coming in just a moment. And Simon and I will sort of trawl through what some of the things that the King said in that speech, and possibly look forward to the speeches at the state banquet. Let's take a short break, though. It's 8:49.
This is LBC.
Next.
Hi, just these, thanks. Do you do cashback?
Just need to check you're not a robot first. New security policy.
Okay.
How many traffic lights can you see out the window?
Oh, 2?
No, that's wrong.
Right, well, obviously I'm not a robot.
That's what a robot would say.
What a load of malarkey. Smarty keeps things simple, like 80 gigabytes for £10, and on a rolling monthly SIM plan, you're free to leave any time. Less malarkey, more Smarty. Search Smarty Mobile.
On day 3 of leftovers for lunch, have a day off. Switch it up with a double cheeseburger for $2.49 on the McDonald's Saver menu.
Leftovers left the chat.
Talk about saver satisfaction. Served from 11 a.m. Price and participation may vary. Fees apply to delivery orders, subject to availability.
Tesco Insurance are driving down the cost of motoring with 10% off car insurance. Take out a car insurance policy before the 15th of May 2026 and you'll get 10% off with club card prices. We offer a range of cover options, so you can choose the one that's right for you. Save 10% when you buy or renew a car policy with Tesco Insurance. Search Tesco Car Insurance and get a quote direct today. Club card required. Excludes add-ons. T's and C's apply.
At PensionBee, we believe that when your pension is in a good place, you're in a good place. Download the app or go to pensionbee.com and be pension confident when investing your capital is at risk.
3, 2, 1, 0% APR on an all-electric Mini Cooper. What was that, Luton? Handling is extraordinary, centre of gravity so low, and it could be ours with a 15% deposit and 3-year term. OK, Luton, reroute me to the nearest Mini retailer now.
Land a new all-electric Mini Cooper with 0% APR. Report to your Mini retailer today. Mini UK is a credit broker. Ordered and delivered by 30th of June. PCP finance with Mini Financial Services. Subject to status. 18+. T's and C's apply. mini.co.uk/Cooper.
This is LBC. Message Iain Dale on WhatsApp now on 0345 60 60 973.
And you can call us on that number too. It is 8:52. We're live in Washington, D.C. We've all just been listening to or watching the King's speech to this joint session of Congress. Lots of reaction coming in. Dermot says, Ian and Simon, put aside my frustration that the royal visit has gone ahead for now and hopefully for good. King Charles is playing an absolute blinder. James in Surrey, I think that was a barnstormer from Charles. It was political, nuanced and very wise. He was a walking advertisement for learning, reflection, erudition, and made the point subtly and with iron resolve to be true to his beliefs. Proud of the monarch today. Mike in Salisbury, really interesting, Ian and Simon, watching this from time to time. Who is and isn't applauding or standing for parts of the speech? Andy says, I noticed the only time the Vice President didn't clap was when Ukraine was mentioned. I thought that was actually one of the strongest parts of the speech. There was no nuance there. That was straight between the eyes.
Correct.
And I thought the reaction within the chamber was quite markedly positive to that.
Yes, and it came out of the King reminding Americans that after 9/11, NATO invoked Article 5 for the first time. We answered the call together, shoulder to shoulder through 2 world wars, Afghanistan, 9/11. We stood with you then, and we stand with you now. And then he went on to talk about the unyielding resolve needed for the defence of Ukraine and required to secure a truly just and lasting peace. This is a Washington where the president insists, despite what actually happened in 9/11, that NATO has never been there for the United States, that NATO won't be there for the United States in the event of any future incident where the United States requires NATO's assistance. Furious, of course, that NATO has not, from his perspective, been there for the United States on the issue of Iran. That was the king, reminding everybody of the actual facts of the case and reminding everybody that Ukraine is unresolved and there needs to be a truly just and lasting peace, given that the President of the United States appears to be much more interested in delivering a peace that is of greater interest to Vladimir Putin than it is to Volodymyr Zelensky. But Iain, can we just come back to that astonishing social media message that the White House posted on X while the king was speaking? And if you're watching us on YouTube or the Global Player, we can show it to you. We've got the graphic of it. As the king was speaking, the White House put out a graphic, a picture of the king and Donald Trump together earlier in the day. I think maybe even possibly a picture of them yesterday. I think today, the official welcoming ceremony. And it's captioned, "Two Kings," with a crown emoji. That tells you everything you need to know about the impact this royal visit is having on the President of the United States. It is the political equivalent of a 5-year-old when being berated by parents or teachers or remonstrated with, puts his fingers in his ears and go, no, you can say what you like, I'm not listening. That is what they were doing by putting that social media message out. That is, first of all, the disrespect to the monarch at a moment when he's making this vital speech to a co-equal branch of government here in the United States is unprecedented. But it's a clear message that the White House is not willing to receive the message that the king has been brought here to deliver, which is that this alliance between the US and the UK is foundational, it is fundamental, it is vitally important to the shared security of the two countries, to the shared economic prosperity of these two countries, and it needs to be renewed, and it needs to be nurtured, and it needs to be burnished. And this White House, through that single deeply insulting social media message, at a time when the No Kings movement here mobilizes to protest their view that Donald Trump is positioning himself as a monarch, they will say tomorrow he was just joking. It was just a joke. We'll hear Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, who will undoubtedly be asked by reporters for a reaction saying, well, the president's got that funny old sense of humour. Or he'll say, I haven't seen it. I can't comment on it. That was a message from the White House to the King and to Sir Keir Starmer that when this is over, we are immediately reverting to type.
Now, never let it be said that I'm accusing you of over-interpreting, Simon. But
you can accuse me of over-interpreting.
But that was a White House tweet. It wasn't a Donald Trump Truth Social
Nothing
post.
goes up. Nothing goes up without him.
Seriously,
no,
they consult him over every tweet they put up.
There
really?
is no way that will have gone up on the White House social media feed without Donald Trump being fully aware that that was being posted. What he puts on Truth Social, he sits there with an assistant next to him. He dictates everything. It gets typed up. He looks at it. He reads it over. That's why, when he posts the racist video of the Obamas, the meme of the Obamas, it's not believable when they try and blame it on a junior member of staff. Because in documentary footage, you can see him during the campaign. He absolutely steers that social media feed. Doesn't do the same for the White House. Well, if he didn't know about it, you would expect whoever did post that to be escorted out of the White House and fired by the end of the day. And I promise you that won't happen.
Right, we've got 45 seconds to go until we go to the news. I'm going to say that was possibly the most interesting monarchical speech that I've ever heard. And I don't say that lightly, but I think there were many messages in that. Whoever was behind the drafting of it, I thought did a pretty brilliant job.
Definitely.
There was the right mixture of humour, incisiveness, nuance and message. And that's, in the end, what a successful speech is all about. It didn't have to be delivered brilliantly. It wasn't delivered brilliantly, I don't think. I think it was a little bit hesitating at times. As Simon said, I think he did lose his place a little bit, or couldn't get the pages unstuck at times. But no matter. He delivered the message that his government wanted him to deliver. And I don't think that he will have disagreed with any word of it, because there have been occasions in the past when I've watched the Queen making speeches and I've thought, does she really believe this? I think he will have believed that. Anyway, it doesn't really matter what I think or Simon thinks. Let's get your views over the course of the next hour. 0345 6060 973. Judging from the texts that are coming in, most of you absolutely loved it. There's the occasional Grinch, as you might imagine. But will this speech be remembered in years to come as one of the great monarchical speeches of our time? I suspect it might. But what will be the long-term impact of it? Give me a call now, 0345 6060 973. You can WhatsApp us on that number and you can text 84850. So another hour with Simon and myself in Washington, D.C., interpreting what the long-term implications of this are, and we'll look forward to the state banquet in just a couple of hours' time.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 9 o'clock, King Charles has given an historic speech to US Congress saying we are meeting at times of great uncertainty, referencing the conflicts in Ukraine and the Middle East. His Majesty said that despite their differences, the UK and America remain united in defending democracy and protecting their people. With relations between the two nations' governments shaken by the war in Iran, he urged leaders to build on the alliance. His speech was interrupted by multiple standing ovations. He also addressed the attempted assassination of Donald Trump in Washington on Saturday.
The incident not far from this great building that sought to harm the leadership of your nation and to foment wider fear and discord. Let me say with unshakable resolve, such acts of violence will never succeed.
Sir Keir Starmer has avoided an investigation into whether he misled MPs over Peter Mandelson's appointment as an ambassador. MPs have decided not to get a committee to look into his claims that full due process was followed. Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister, Darren Jones, defended his boss before the vote.
There is clearly a difference between asking for progress updates and putting pressure on officials to predetermine an outcome or not to follow a proper process. That was not the case in this scenario.
Earlier, the PM's former top advisor Morgan McSweeney denied putting pressure on civil servants to speed up the vetting process. A man has died after being stabbed in the chest in an underpass in Worcestershire. The 41-year-old was found injured at around 8:30 this morning in Redditch. Two men from Afghanistan have been charged with raping a woman in Plymouth at the weekend. The 19 and 31-year-olds are due back in court in June. CCTV shows a person using a liquid to try to start a fire at a memorial wall to protesters killed in anti-government protests in Iran. Yesterday's attempted arson attack was in the Jewish area of Golders Green in London. And a man could face up to 20 years in jail after pleading guilty over a plot to attack Taylor Swift's concerts in Vienna. It was foiled, but 3 performances were cancelled in 2024. In the city, the FTSE 100 closed up 11 points at 10,332. The pound buys $1.35 and €1.15. LBC weather tonight will be dry with clear spells, cloudier in the northeast, patchy frost and fog developing in the north, staying breezy in the south, lows of 7 degrees. Tomorrow, any early fog will clear to sunshine for most, a few showers in the southwest, windy in the south, highs of 19 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daisy Steele.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. If you've just joined us, you missed a corker of the last hour with the King's speech to the joint session of Congress here in Washington, D.C. Simon Marks is with me, has been holding my hand all the way through this and doing it very well, if I may say so. Now, that speech surpassed my expectations. I can't articulate maybe what my expectations were, but I think it delivered for the government, it delivered for the country, and it delivered for the British people. You can't ask for much more than that.
No, I agree with that totally. I mean, I think that this was the King laying down a marker on a whole variety of different issues and saying, this is what we believe in. And they are the age-old beliefs that underpin a transatlantic alliance that has proved itself over the past 8 decades urgently needs to be preserved, renewed. Sure, there can be tweaks around the edges, but it has to be recommitted to by both sides, the United States and the UK and its European allies. This was an uncompromising speech. He did not in any way pussyfoot around evident disagreements between the US and the UK without openly citing them. It was absolutely apparent what he was saying. There were howls at one point of, I think, whoops of joy from Democrats when, as I was saying earlier, he cited the Magna Carta and talked about the need for an executive to face checks and balances constitutionally here. I don't think Democrats could believe what they were hearing in that section of the speech because it aligns so clearly with their views about Donald Trump's determination to create an all-powerful executive. Everything that he said about NATO, everything that he said about 9/11, everything that he said about the fact that today Britain and the United States are building F-35s together. They are partners in the AUKUS submarine project, that this is a deep-seated partnership on multiple levels, including the economic level, citing the facts about two-way trade, as opposed to, occasional claims by the President of the United States that he's been ripped off by his trading partners and that in some fashion his Liberation Day tariffs, now overruled by the Supreme Court, was designed to oversee that. And then that culmination, quoting the Gettysburg Address, quoting Abraham Lincoln, the world will little remember what we say, but will remember what we do. Words that ought to sting a President of the United States who constantly talks, constantly transmits, and rarely thinks about the weight of the things that he is saying about events that are taking place on the world stage. But does it achieve anything? Does it add up to a row of beans this time next week when we're looking back on it?
I'll tell you one thing that it achieves. It puts Sir Ed Davey in his place. Because I defy Sir Ed Davey, the leader of the Liberal Democrats, to come on LBC. I mean, if you're listening now, Ed, we'd love to hear from you over the course of the next 50 minutes or so. He was against this visit taking place. He said the King should not be put in this position. Now, I think that this speech demonstrates exactly why it needed to take place.
No, I agree with you. I mean, look, the sentiment, you will know better than I do, on the other side of the Atlantic has been very heavily against this visit going forward.
Indeed, from many of our listeners.
No, indeed. I mean, I look at the comments of listeners and viewers that come in over social media and over our YouTube channel, and it is absolutely clear that millions of people thought this visit should be cancelled. And I agree that the importance of this speech was, first of all, even if it goes nowhere with the current occupant of the White House, which I suspect it will not, even if it goes nowhere, you've laid down a marker and stated absolutely clearly what you believe in, what the stakes are, and you've said it to 435 members of the House of Representatives, the entire Senate, within Capitol Hill, on Capitol Hill, a vital branch of government where power could change next January. So never mind what happens next week or next month. This is also partly a speech preparing for a possible transfer of power on Capitol Hill in January.
And also, there was no sucking up to Donald Trump. There was none of that sort of greasing up, which you sometimes get in this sort of speech.
No flattery at all. No. And can we also just pause to observe that at the very beginning of the speech, the King managed to use the word semi-quincentennial without stumbling. That alone is an achievement.
Oh dear, that's a good one. Right, let's get some thoughts from a Trump supporter. Pastor Dr. Mark Burns joins me, President Trump's spiritual advisor, who's also the founder of the Now television network. Thank you very much for joining us again. Always good to talk to you. What did you make of that speech from the King?
Well, I think it's a historic moment, again, to reestablish the relationships, the bumpy relationships with your current Prime Minister and President Donald Trump, just to continue to remind the world that we are our two greatest allies and to continue to build on that relationship so that we might continue to make America great again and make UK great again.
Well, I think the UK is already great, frankly, but there we go. Do you not think, though, that there were some fairly direct messages to the president in parts of this speech? Do you think he will heed those messages?
Well, again, it's already clear that, and I don't think the UK is great again. I think the people are great of the UK, but I think you're going into a very dangerous direction. And I think many in America believe that. But the reality of it is, UK has always been our greatest and oldest ally. And it is important that, we share so many of the same messaging. Naturally, your Prime Minister and even your King have done some things that has been very challenging to us Americans in regards to the direction that you're taking your country. But the reality of it is, this was a good day to continue to build upon our previous strong relationships. And yes, some of the things the King said, I believe, were unnecessary. And that he really needs to, again, stick to kissing babies and also being the head of the Christian church. I remind him.
I'm sorry. Don't be so insulting to the King. He made a very, very thoughtful speech there with some important messages, particularly around our collective security. And you resort to an insult about he should stick to kissing babies, grow up.
I think you confused my statement, and I'm sorry you may be a little slow in what I'm saying. I'll speak slower so you can understand, because what I said was not an insult at all. I think, again, I made it very clear that this was a great day for Great Britain and for the United States. I think this is a beautiful thing. It's an honor that His Majesty took time out of his schedule to come to the United States of America. It's a beautiful thing, and I think that this is the kind of the unity that we need to continue to build on. There are some policies that you are having in your country that is challenging to us conservatives here in America, but that's neither here nor there. Again, so I'm sorry you must have misunderstood what I said as an insult. It wasn't an insult. He is still the head of the Christian church in the UK. He is the head of the Church of England. And to many Christians in the UK are challenged or disturbed that his actions have seemed to be belittled the Christian faith while promoting other faiths, while he is still yet the head of the Christian church. But it's an honor that he came to the United States.
Sorry, he spent a substantial section of his speech reaffirming his Christian faith and explaining why it's important not just to him, but to our country, to your country. I'm not quite following you about how he's sort of tried to undermine it.
Well, again, I'm not speaking specific to the speech. I think the outcry of American Christians and the outcry of the UK Christians previously has caused His Majesty to echo his strong sentiments of the Christian faith. And that's a beautiful thing. That's what we wanted to see. That's what we want to hear. Again, that is more so for the Christians in the United Kingdom. Who felt very strongly that their king, the head of the Church of England, has diverted from, promoting the Christian faith in the UK. But again, I think it was a beautiful thing. I think to see all of the great supporters who were there to support His Majesty, the King, what an honor. I do hope to get to meet him myself, especially when I come back to London. And so to be able to continue to preach prosperity and unity amongst our two countries. But again, there are some challenges that's still there, especially with your Prime Minister, but hopefully we can get them worked out.
Well, I'm no fan of our Prime Minister, but the insults that Donald Trump has doled out to him ever since the attacks on Iran have been utterly despicable, not the sort of thing that you would expect from the head of one state to the Prime Minister of another. And then 3 days before this visit takes place, we have administration officials, apparently with the endorsement of the White House, saying that President Trump is calling into question UK sovereignty over the Falkland Islands. And you think, well, on what planet is that an appropriate thing to do 3 days before the King of the Falkland Islands visits this country?
Well, I think the real question should be asked is what planet do you live on to where the United States' greatest ally, the UK, refused to support the United States of America's positioning to open up the Strait of Hormuz and to support UK. It is you who need the oil, not the United States of America. It is you who need to make sure that that strait is open. But yet we are risking our soldiers. We are helping the millions upon millions of Iranians who are thanking President Trump for coming to their rescue and removing that evil regime. Even right now, and I spoke to the president a couple of days ago about Iran, and even now, the very fact that their leadership is all in chaos just shows once again why it was good that Donald Trump, President Trump, acted upon that. So it's challenging when the UK refused to send naval support. It's challenging, and again, what planet you living on when our greatest ally refused to help us when we needed them. But yet, trust me, when it comes time for the UK to need us, the United States of America will be there.
The fact is that Britain has come to America's aid on many occasions in the past. President Trump didn't even seem to know that we did after 9/11 on Afghanistan. It is for sovereign nations, whether it's Britain, Germany, France, any nation, to decide whether they are going to take part in military action. Now, I happen to disagree with our government stance on this, but I fully respect our elected government's right to make that decision. And I mean, as you well know, there have been occasions when America has done things which haven't been to the advantage of our country. But these alliances, they are formed over decades, not temporary sort of years, and they have to endure if our collective security is to endure. But that doesn't mean to say that when Donald Trump says jump, we just say how high. International relations don't work like that.
Well, you're speaking about the Trump deranged syndrome that you clearly have, and many of those in the UK have. We're not talking about Donald Trump. We're talking about the government of the United States of America. President Trump is the elected commander-in-chief. But the government of the United States of America.
Absolutely, I fully recognize that.
So you're talking about Donald Trump, and you're talking about his personality. You never met the man, but you're talking about his personality.
I haven't mentioned his personality.
He says how high. That's a Trump deranged syndrome mentality. We're talking about the security of our two great nations, and the reality of it is, you are part of NATO, and so when the United States, who is a member of NATO, needs or requesting help, you should in return.
An organization which President Trump consistently undermines
at the hands of the evil regime. And thanks to President Trump, they are now in a leadership situation to where things are falling apart internally in their own nation, and that gives an opportunity for democracy and the beautiful people of Iran to rise to the situation.
It's the same regime. The regime, the personalities.
If it was the same regime, their Navy would still be existing. Their Navy doesn't exist. If it was the same regime, their Air Force would exist. Their Air Force does not exist. If it's the same regime, the same Iranians are now saying we want the Strait of Hormuz to be opened up, but we have an internal leadership issue. That was not the same under the former Ayatollah. No, he's been eliminated. And all of the generals have been eliminated thanks to President Donald Trump. And remember, I don't understand the real question we should be asking, why does the UK love Iranians being killed by this evil regime? Why aren't you stepping up and helping the beautiful people of Iran who wants to be free? Why are you so in hatred of Donald Trump so much that you would allow Iranians to die at the hands of an evil Islamic and not step up the plate in the system?
For somebody who says he's a pastor, you don't have a very Christian attitude to people in debate, do you? I think we'll end it there. Thank you very much indeed. No, enough. We've heard enough derangement, to use the word that he used there. Simon, look, you can't reason with people like this, can you?
They're not set to receive. They're not set to engage in a serious-minded conversation. They're only set to transmit. And speaking of transmission, shortly before the King started making his speech on Capitol Hill, President Trump on social media opened up a new front against the German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, who yesterday publicly said that Iran was humiliating the United States, took massive issue with the manner in which the president had begun the war, said publicly he believed that the war on Iran had been started without any plan and without any strategy, which is essentially a statement of the obvious. Donald Trump now on his Truth Social feed. The Chancellor of Germany, Friedrich Merz, thinks it's okay for Iran to have a nuclear weapon. Well, that's not what Friedrich Merz has said at all. He doesn't know what he's talking about. If Iran had a nuclear weapon, the whole world would be held hostage. I am doing something with Iran right now that other nations or presidents should have done long ago. No wonder Germany is doing so poorly, both economically and otherwise. So you think we got problems? So has Friedrich Merz in Germany tonight.
Rejoice at that news. Right, we will talk to our reporter Joseph Draper in a moment. He's inside the Capitol building. We are going to come to your calls, I do promise, but you can understand on a night like this, we do want to talk to guests as well, even though I think we could have probably done without that last one. It is 19 minutes past 9.
This is LBC.
At Ocado, you'll save 25% on your first shop and get free delivery, which means if you were to buy a 4-cheese pizza, you'd basically be getting one of the cheeses for free. Save and splurge at Ocado, the online supermarket.
Geographical and other restrictions. Min spend £60 and charges apply. Discount available on food. New customers only. Max saving £20. Terms at ocado.com.
3, 2, 1, 0% APR on an all-electric Mini Cooper. What was that, Luton? Handling is extraordinary, centre of gravity so low, and it could be ours with a 15% deposit and 3-year term. OK, Luton, reroute me to the nearest Mini retailer now.
Land a new all-electric Mini Cooper with 0% APR. Report to your Mini retailer today. Mini UK is a credit broker. Ordered and delivered by 30th of June. PCP finance with Mini Financial Services. Subject to status. 18 plus. T's and C's apply. mini.co.uk/Cooper.
Next.
Hi, just these, thanks. Do you do cashback?
Just need to check you're not a robot first. New security policy.
Okay.
How many traffic lights can you see out the window?
Oh, 2?
No, that's wrong.
Right, well, obviously I'm not a robot.
That's what a robot would say.
What a load of malarkey. Smarty keeps things simple, like 80 gigabytes for £10. And on a rolling monthly SIM plan, you're free to leave any time. Less malarkey, more smarty. Search Smarty Mobile.
When you're smiling. Banning Dental Group clinics with over 5,000 top-rated Google reviews. Keep on smiling.
This is LBC with Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973.
21 minutes past 9 on LBC. Let's cross live to the Capitol building where we find our intrepid reporter Joseph Draper, and he has been obviously watching the address of the King. Joseph, tell us about the atmosphere there.
Well, I can tell you now, it beats standing outside the ambassador's residence. That was an incredible speech, wasn't it? In the chamber. I mean, the atmosphere was just electric, and there was so much unity in the room. That was one thing which really came through. I mean, the King, of course, stays above politics, doesn't he? But really, there was so much unity across the House, and it was just so emotional hearing the King talk there, hearing the reception he received, the warm reception he received from hundreds of congressmen and women today. As I say, very much trying to stay above politics, to reframe that US-UK relationship as something almost transcendent. Got a huge loads of applause really for actually some of the jokes that he made. I think quite aside from the comments about NATO and the transatlantic alliance, quite aside from all the serious stuff, he was genuinely funny. And so many of those jokes got real belly laughs in the room. But there was one particularly extraordinary moment that I really picked up on, and that was when he referenced in executive power and the importance of limiting executive power. And that was the one moment really when you could sense a slight unease in the room, a slight imbalance, the introduction again of perhaps party politics, because when he said that, when he referred to the importance of checks and balances, the Democrats huge applause from the Democrats, standing up, actually interrupting the King. But there was applause across the House, but it was noticeably louder from the Democrat side, and they actually stood up, which could not be said for the Republican side. So that was a really extraordinary moment, and we can bring you some of that now.
And those roots go even further back in history. The US Supreme Court Historical Society has calculated that Magna Carta is cited in at least 160 Supreme Court cases since 1789, not least as the foundation of the principle that executive power is subject to checks and balances.
I mean, that was an extraordinary moment, wasn't it? And a very awkward moment, I think, for the Vice President, J.D. Vance, in the room. It may well have been a veiled reference to the President, many of his critics saying how he tends to push the limits of executive power. But that really was a moment when party politics, I think, really did show in the chamber, the only moment, actually. Aside from that, there were also deliberate comments as well, I think, about the importance of the NATO alliance, particularly important given President Trump's well-advertised ambivalence towards that alliance, openly suggesting he may take America out of it. That very much mirrored, I think, as well, his mother, the Queen Elizabeth, who also referenced that alliance back in 1991 when she was in the same chamber addressing Congress. So here's what he said about the NATO alliance.
In the immediate aftermath of 9/11, when NATO invoked Article 5 for the first time, and the United Nations Security Council was united in the face of terror, we answered the call together, as our people have done so for more than a century, shoulder to shoulder through 2 world wars, the Cold War, Afghanistan, and moments that have defined our shared security. Today, Mr. Speaker, that same unyielding resolve is needed for the defense of Ukraine and her most courageous people.
But there were slightly more delicate, I think, awkward moments as well for the King, particularly, Iain, when he spoke about the victims of sexual abuse, potentially a veiled reference to Jeffrey Epstein. He's come under a lot of pressure over the decision for him not to meet the victims of Jeffrey Epstein. Of course, his brother had a very close relationship with the convicted paedophile. And there was a lot of hope, I think, among victims here in Washington. Many of them were meeting in Capitol Hill for a press conference earlier. They criticised the decision for him not to meet with them. I spoke to one of the victims' mothers as well. She was very upset by that. But he did reference victims of sexual assault. And this is what he said.
In both of our countries, it is the very fact of our vibrant, diverse and free societies that gives us our collective strength, including to support victims of some of the ills that so tragically exist in both our societies today.
But I think overall, generally, it really was an incredible moment, and there was a lot of unity, a lot of enthusiasm and support for the King in that room.
Joseph, thank you very much indeed. That's Joseph Draper, LBC's reporter at Capitol Hill. Let's speak to Sidney Blumenthal now, journalist and historian who's also former advisor to both Bill and Hillary Clinton. And if memory serves me correctly, Sidney, Gordon Brown as well.
Yes, and we developed a very close relationship with both under President Clinton, the government of Tony Blair, and then later when Hillary was Secretary of State with Gordon Brown as Prime Minister.
Now, tell me what you made of that speech by the King, because I thought it was, do you agree with me that it was fairly masterful in the way that he didn't fall off the tightrope, but there were some very, very clear messages, much clearer than you sometimes might expect from a monarch?
It was a great triumph for Charles. It was one of his finest hours, in my view, perhaps his finest hour. Very fraught moment, very difficult situation to maneuver, but it will not restore the special relationship. Charles hit every note perfectly, including the notes of humor, the notes of history, and the notes of policy. And he also stood for the transatlantic values of generations. But he also provided, by inference, a distinct personal contrast in his manner to Donald Trump, the man who would be king, and a contrast to the kind of rage that Trump is exhibiting. Charles was really a paragon of an appeal to reason and common interests, not of retribution and self-aggrandizement.
Do you think that Donald Trump will have been listening? Do you think that there will have been parts of that speech which maybe has annoyed him and he might exact some revenge at the state banquet?
Oh, I don't think so. He is deferential to Charles because Charles is a real king and Trump is a poseur and wishes to be a king. And by his proximity to Charles, he thinks that his royalty is somehow elevated. So he won't be angry at Charles if he recognizes what Charles was saying in really a very well-crafted speech. I would say if there were a snap election in the United States right now, Charles would win in a landslide.
Well, there's a thought. We could go back 250 years, couldn't we?
Well, the American people right now might think about it. While the king was delivering his speech, there was a new Reuters poll released showing Trump at his new lowest point of 34% disapproval, approval. He's overwhelmingly disapproved by about 2/3 of the American people.
I don't want to bounce you, so don't answer this if you don't want to, but we've got some breaking news that earlier this evening, the former FBI director, James Comey, was indicted and an arrest warrant has been issued for him. I mean, that seems on the face of it quite extraordinary.
It's absurd. Supposedly the charges are unknown. The indictment has not been released, but it is supposedly because he arranged seashells in the sand of numbers that they interpret as somehow inciting the assassination of Donald Trump. This is in the aftermath of the terrible, horrible assassination attempt by at the ballroom of the White House Correspondents' Dinner. And there have been a number of retributive actions that Trump has taken in this aftermath. One is against James Comey, whom he seeks to imprison because Comey was involved in the investigation of the interference by the Russians in the U.S. federal election of 2016 and investigating Trump's role and any connections involving the Russians. The Mueller report, by the way, showed that there were more than 200 direct contacts between Russians and the Trump campaign. The other thing that Trump has done in the aftermath of the White House Correspondents' Dinner is that he is attacking the Disney Corporation and Jimmy Kimmel, the host of Late Night, the variety show, the comedy show, for a joke he had made about First Lady Melania Trump that was before this event, which they're now claiming also, like with Comey, was an incitement to assassination. These are absurd claims, but they are pressing this in new campaigns of retribution. It sort of makes the ballroom assassination in all its horribleness look like something like Trump's manipulation of a kind of Reichstag fire, trying to just grab power and punish people, at the same time that the king speaks about the rule of law before the Congress.
Sydney, thank you very much indeed for talking to LBC this evening. That's Sydney Blumenthal, former advisor to Bill and Hillary Clinton and the author of some very good books on American politics. We'll come to Simon in a moment for his reaction on this indictment for James Comey, because I think that is quite an extraordinary development, and we'll come to your calls as well. Daniel in Hayes has been heroic in hanging on for so long. I feel an absolute duty to come to him first. Thank you very much indeed. Let's go to the news headlines at 9:33 with Daisy Steele.
King Charles has told Congress the UK-US partnership is more important than ever, warning global challenges are too great for any one nation alone. He praised the strength of the transatlantic alliance. US lawmakers responded with repeated applause. MPs have rejected opening an investigation into whether Sir Keir Starmer misled Parliament over the appointment of Peter Mandelson as US ambassador. Earlier, the PM's former top advisor, Morgan McSweeney, denied putting pressure on civil servants to speed up his vetting. Murder investigations starting after a man was stabbed in the chest in Worcestershire. The 41-year-old was discovered in an underpass in Redditch at around 8:30 this morning. LBC weather tonight will be dry with clear spells, cloudier in the northeast, patchy frost and fog developing in the north, staying breezy in the south, lows of 7 degrees.
This is LBC.
Close your eyes. Take a deep breath. And come on in to Classic FM Calm, LBC's soothing sister station. Find peace in the music with Classic FM Calm. Listen on Global Player or ask your smart speaker to play Classic FM Calm.
At Ocado, you'll save 25% on your first shop and get free delivery, which means if you were to buy a 4-cheese pizza, you'd basically be getting one of the cheeses for free. Save and splurge at Ocado, the online supermarket.
Geographical and other restrictions. Min spend £60 and charges apply. Discount available on food, new customers only. Max saving £20. Terms at ocado.com.
How does it feel to face the storm head on? Go beyond the map. Drive into the extreme. Or win a Ford Explorer. Test drive one before the end of May and you could win one. Now how would that feel? Search Win a Ford Explorer. Ready, set, Ford. T's and C's apply. 25 plus only. See ford.co.uk for details.
Go all Irish to France with great low prices. With Irish Ferries, you can for less. Irish Ferries. See you travel differently. T's and C's apply.
When it comes to retirement advice, the last thing you want is to be put in a bucket. Seen as this type of person or that type of person. At Fisher Investments UK, we never put you in a bucket. We always tailor retirement advice that's just right for you. Fisher Investments UK. Retirement advice that's as individual as you are. Learn more at fisherinvestments.co.uk. Investing involves the risk of loss. Fisher Investments UK is regulated by the UK Financial Conduct Authority.
Iain Dale on LBC.
It's 9:36 here on LBC. Simon, just very briefly on James Comey, this indictment, what does that mean? And maybe for our listeners, just give a little bit of the background.
Yeah, so James Comey is the FBI director, former FBI director, that basically Donald Trump accuses of treason because James Comey was trying to preserve the independence of the FBI and wasn't willing to bend to Donald Trump's will when it came to investigations into Donald Trump's alleged ties with Russia. They made an effort to charge him already once, charges of lying to Congress that were thrown out of court by a judge. Now an arrest warrant has been issued because, and I am not making this up, James Comey posted a picture on Instagram last year in which seashells were arranged to spell 8647, the numbers 8647. And the White House believes that that was an incitement to assassinate the President of the United States, because when you in America refer to 86ing something, it means you're throwing something away, tossing something out. I'm going to 86 it. And 47, of course, because President Trump is the 47th President of the United States. So they have issued an arrest warrant tonight for James Comey on these ludicrous charges that he was calling for the assassination of President Trump. There are no coincidences in the United States that this is happening today when the king is here making a speech talking about the importance of checks and balances. They're moving forward with this criminal case against James Comey and absolutely indicating that Donald Trump's determination to take retribution and to use the Department of Justice as his personal office of retribution against people that he perceives to have wronged him is about to move into hypergear.
I interviewed James Comey a few years ago when his book came out, and I thought, what an outstanding individual. I mean, the very thought that he could be subjected to this.
Well, they've also gone after his daughter, who herself is a lawyer or prosecutor. They've gone after her as well, legally. There's a whole raft of people, this whole list of enemies. And one of the reasons why Pam Bondi was fired as Attorney General, replaced now with the acting Attorney General, Todd Blanche, who used to be Donald Trump's personal attorney, is because Trump was furious that Pam Bondi was not moving faster to bring these kind of prosecutions against his political enemies.
It's funny, you always thought there was a separation between...
Yeah, well, that's gone.
Yeah,
Traditional,
completely.
not constitutionally guaranteed.
Right. Daniel in Hayes, your moment has finally arrived. I'm so grateful to you for being so patient. What would you like to tell us, Daniel?
It's very worth to wait, Ian. It was very settled, very unsecure world. We have a king. He outspoken. He gave us history's lesson. Law. You know, this great nation is cemented in every angle, and he's spoken. Every word was. I heard it, and what can I say? Well represented. I mean, he make us to be safe, and he sound. His message was heard. I don't know. Tear was in my eyes, Ian. It's just like, I don't know what to say. He is the real king. I thought the queen should be irrepressible, but he is a great king. And he spoke very, very well. And the message is, I think, is taken by the American people, that great nation. I'm afraid they have a cowboy president. I hope he learned the lesson. These two nations will never, ever separated by his remark. Always they will be stronger with this message we heard today from our king.
Daniel, thank you very much indeed. I think you've spoken for a lot of people who've been texting in as well. Mary's in Bromley. Hello, Mary.
Hi, hello. Ian?
Hello, what would you like to say?
Hi, Ian. Thanks for taking my call. And I was going to say that I think Prince Charles's speech, I think had the right content, but I was just a bit disappointed, lackluster in the delivery. I think it didn't sort of appeal to American humour. It's just a bit flat.
Well, he got quite a few laughs.
Quite a few. I think there was more standing ovation.
He's not there to be a comedy act, is he?
No, I'm not saying he should, but I'm just saying to engage more. Do you see what I mean? That's just my personal opinion. But yeah.
Okay. All right, Mary, thank you very much. Scott says, Charles not only sent strong messages to Trump with beautiful tact, which will definitely help the US-UK relationship, he's also repaired some damage to the royals with us British, which was done by Andrew's associations. My love for them has been fully restored. I felt proud tonight. And Stephen Guilford says, I thought our monarch is supposed to be non-political. He's done something Starmer hasn't got the courage to do. Shame on Starmer. I think that's being slightly unfair there, because the speech was written effectively by the government and endorsed by Keir Starmer.
A couple of updates. The acting Attorney General of the United States, Todd Blanche, says that James Comey should be jailed for 10 years if he is convicted on these trumped-up charges of arranging seashells in an allegedly incentivized manner to try and get people to assassinate the president. Complete Banana Republic stuff. The verdict on the speech from Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina is in. Simply put, he writes, the King nailed it. His speech was a much-needed morale boost for Congress as he glowingly praised our nation and highlighted the role Congress plays in our democratic republic. That's interesting because Senator Graham is, I think, concerned that there has been an end run done around Congress by his friend, the president, ever since he returned to the White House last January a year ago. He says the speech was a terrific combo of wit, humour, history and appreciation. I believe most members of Congress feel better after the speech than they did before, though I will admit, writes Senator Graham, it was a bit odd that the unifying feeling had to come from the King of England. But so be it.
You see, this is where I think the fact that this is taking place, 3 months before the what's the word? The semi-quincentennial.
Yes, doesn't exactly roll off the tongue, but the King nailed that.
If it was nearer that, it would have been even more impactful, I think. Right, let's cross now to the grandson of a former president of the United States, Harry S. Truman. He's Clifton Truman Daniel. Harry Truman was the 33rd US president, was president from 1945 until 1952, I want to say. I think that's right. And a warm welcome to you, Clifton. Thank you very much indeed for coming on the programme. What did you make of tonight's proceedings and the speech of the King?
Well, I'm sorry to say that I was in bed and not watching it because I have a presentation to do today, which I'm working through. So I did not see the King's speech. My apologies.
Oh, right. Well, okay. Well, let's talk more generally about the relationship between the United Kingdom and the United States, because obviously in your grandfather's day, it was an incredibly close relationship throughout the Second World War. And I know that your grandfather was quite close to Winston Churchill. I think they talked a lot in Churchill's period of opposition when Clement Attlee was Prime Minister. Do you think that the closeness of that kind of relationship will ever return?
I hope so. That's one of the as a family member, that's one of the things that I enjoyed about my grandfather was his friendships. He believed strongly in those, particularly with the British, with Churchill, with the young Queen Elizabeth, and that relationship actually continued in the family for a while. My mother told me a story years ago that she and her father had dinner with the Queen and Prince Philip, I believe at Buckingham Palace. And at one point, the Queen leaned over to my mother. Prince Philip kept looking under the table. He kept lifting the tablecloth. And the Queen leaned over to my mother and said, "Is he feeding the dogs?" And my mother said, "I really don't want to get into this." So the relationship continued. But as far as on a more serious note, it is a long-standing valuable relationship between the United States and the United Kingdom, something that my grandfather treasured.
What do you make of that relationship today, though? Because it has been undermined. I mean, President Trump's supporters would say it's been undermined by the British government. Most people in my country would say it's the direct opposite, that it's Donald Trump has undermined the relationship through his gratuitous criticism, not only of our Prime Minister, but also of our country. And an odd thing to do in the run-up to a state visit of this nature.
Yeah. Well, beyond the criticism, the current administration is more of a my way or the highway style of governing. They do what they want to do, and they expect loyalty. They expect to be followed. They expect to be agreed with. In terms of a friendship, which is kind of what we're discussing here, that's not the best way that a friendship works. A friendship works by talking to each other, coming to some conclusions, sharing ideas, working together, which is something that we have done in the past. And again, as you said a minute ago, I hope we wind up being able to do again. And there may be some things that the Trump administration can do or say that will improve the relationship, but it would have to be something along the lines of more of an equal footing.
Do you feel optimistic about America at the moment?
I always feel optimistic about America. One of the America and human nature. James Carter, one of Jimmy Carter's grandsons, said at an event we were at recently. He said that he had faith in humanity. There were people he didn't like. There were things he didn't like, but he had faith in humanity. And I feel the same way. I have faith in humanity, faith in the United States. It's a system that is designed for lots of different points of view, lots of different ways of doing things. And I have faith that it will do what it does and keep on going, keep our democracy going for another 250 years. I heard you guys trying to work out whether how tough that is. I can't even think of the word.
We know that there's a sort of ex-presidents club. All the living presidents seem to always get on really well with each other. Is there? You mentioned that you met Jimmy Carter's grandson there. Is there a sort of ex-presidents family grouping that you sort of develop relationships with other children, grandchildren of ex-presidents because you've all got a common experience?
Yes, there is. I'm one of the founders. It's called the Society of Presidential Descendants.
Wow!
And we have, we know each other. We talk to each other. We work together. We give a book award every 2 years. We visit each other's presidential sites. And just as an aside, one of the descendants who is roped into our orbit through mutual friendships is Duncan Sands, who is Sir Winston's great grandson. So we've got a Churchill in the mix.
Well, I'd love to know more about that. If you've got a website, I'm going to look it up. And thank you so much for joining us. And good luck with your presentation tomorrow. That's Clifton Truman Daniel there, oldest grandson of Harry S. Truman. Absolutely fascinating. Right, we've only got 10 more minutes for this show in Washington. I'm going to miss you, Simon.
I'm going to miss you too, Iain Dale. I'll come and see you soon.
I think you should. Well, you're going to sit in for me and Jimmy, aren't you?
Keep your seat warm.
Right,
seat warming.
It is 10 to 10.
Coming up at 10 on LBC, Henry Riley.
King Charles heralds the UK's relationship with the US, but do you still see America as a reliable partner? Plus, the PM avoids an inquiry over Mandelson's vetting, but does Starmer look stronger or weaker?
Henry Riley at 10. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
How does it feel to face the storm head on? Go beyond the map. Drive into the extreme, or win a Ford Explorer. Test drive one before the end of May and you could win one. Now how would that feel? Search Win a Ford Explorer. Ready, set, Ford. T's and C's apply. 25 plus only. See ford.co.uk for details.
Do you ever feel like getting back under your duvet in the middle of the day? Ferroglobin is a great-tasting liquid formula with iron, which contributes to the reduction of tiredness and fatigue and normal formation of hemoglobin. Ferroglobin from Vitabiotics at Boots, pharmacies and vitabiotics.com.
It's Munich, 1936, and all eyes are on the capital for the upcoming Olympic Games. As athletes fight for gold and the Nazis fight for power, Detective Sebastian Wolf faces a battle of his own. In a search that will take him from high society to the city's darkest corners, Wolf is about to learn just how easily the hunter becomes the hunted. Evil in High Places is the gripping new historical thriller from the million-copy bestseller Rory Clements. Out now.
At Ocado, you'll save 25% on your first shop and get free delivery, which means if you were to buy a 4-cheese pizza, you'd basically be getting one of the cheeses for free. Save and splurge at Ocado, the online supermarket.
Geographical and other restrictions. Min spend £60 and charges apply. Discount available on food, new customers only. Max saving £20. Terms at ocado.com.
Your time is valuable. Your perspective should be too. The Economist cuts through the noise with the stories that truly shape your world.
How can you believe that a new regime won't crush you just like the previous one?
Online scams are stranger than they've ever been.
When the world's turned upside down, know which way is up. Read, watch, or listen to The Economist.
Iain Dale. Text 84850. This is LBC.
It's 8 minutes to 10 on LBC. Dr. Mitchell Rees joins me, American diplomat who worked for 5 US administrations. That must be a record, including at the White House and State Department. He's now a Distinguished Fellow at the Royal United Services Institute in London. Mitchell, very good evening. What do you make of the fact that Donald Trump has been doing some extraordinary things while the King was making his speech, releasing a graphic with the title Two Kings, with a picture of him and the King together with a crown emoji, and then launching, well, the Justice Department have launched an indictment on James Comey, the former FBI director. I mean, what message is this trying to send?
Well, I'd like to say that I'm surprised, but I think where we are now, it's very hard to be surprised that anything that this president does. I think the first item was a demonstration of the president's affinity, if not envy, for King Charles and wanting very much to be like him. The second, I think, was just a continuation of a longstanding vendetta that the president has against the former FBI director. So, again, no surprises. The timing was unfortunate because it took away a little bit from what was a very good presentation by the King to the members of Congress.
Do you think that in the long term, this speech that the King has made tonight will have any impact at all? I think it will have a short-term impact, but I think the jury is out on whether it will have any long-term impact on the transatlantic relationship.
No, I agree. I think it helps usher in momentarily some good feelings. Certainly those are much needed right now in the relationship. But longer term, the relationship is going to be driven by things that are larger than any personal individual personalities. It's going to have to do with economic relationships, military and intelligence cooperation, and a continuation of the shared interests and values that the King articulated in his remarks. And, I'm hoping that those are strong enough to transcend any momentary hiccup that we may be experiencing these days.
And what are you expecting from the state banquet? Because there's a real opportunity for things to go very wrong if Donald Trump decides to go off script.
Well, I think you should expect him to go off script. But, the King is a veteran. This isn't his first rodeo. He's done this for many years very ably. And I think that there is a certain type of deference that the president gives the King that he doesn't give to any other individual that I can think of. So I think that they'll enjoy the dinner. It's not saying that there won't be lots of interesting, shall we say, tweets afterwards. But I think the King is doing a terrific job representing the UK and helping maintain what I still believe is a special relationship.
Thank you very much indeed, Mitchell. That's Mitchell Rees there. He's Distinguished Fellow at the Royal United Services Institute. Well, as we wind up the programme, we've got 3 or 4 minutes left. But let me give you one reflection. In that I think that this sends also a message to all of those people who do not understand why we have a monarchy. I don't think that speech could have been given by a Republican president. I mean, if we had such a thing in the United Kingdom, I'm not going to defend the hereditary principle, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I think King Charles tonight, judging from all of the texts that have come in, and I literally mean virtually all, you're never going to get 100% unanimity, but I'd say 95% of you, certainly the texts that I've seen on my screen here, have said, well, this was a brilliant performance by the King. He did us proud. Joseph Draper there, in his report was, you could almost sense the emotion in his voice. He was in the hall, in the auditorium, watching the King. And he didn't actually say this, so I'm slightly putting words in his mouth. But you could almost tell, Simon, it made him proud to be British.
Yes, absolutely. I've been thinking about a John Cleese film called Clockwise. Don't know if you've ever seen it.
I have seen it because it features my old university.
Oh, wonderful. Well, you may remember that at one point in the film, John Cleese's character says, "It's not the despair. I can live with the despair. It's not the despair that gets to me. It's the hope." And there was hope in that speech that the King delivered in Congress today. There was a vision for a restored relationship. And yet, if you look at all the things that are taking place in this city, separately from the King's speech today, The arrest warrant for James Comey being threatened with 10 years in jail for the way in which he has arrayed some seashells on a beach and taken a picture of them. The administration threatening to try and remove Jimmy Kimmel from his perch at ABC over comments that he made on his comedy show. The White House tweeting out a picture of the King and the President together with the caption "Two Kings" and a crown emoji. The news that President Donald Trump wants to put his picture and his golden signature on the inside cover of American passports to celebrate the United States' 250th birthday. The King tonight is attending a state dinner in the capital of what is increasingly becoming a banana republic. And the hope in that speech is going to be dissipated very quickly, I fear, once he leaves this country, heads off to Bermuda later in the week, and we find ourselves very rapidly once again on the receiving end of more erratic behaviour by the President of the United States.
OK, a couple of texts. Final words from Takiba, who says, so proud to be British, the best speech I ever heard. Ben in Bristol says, wow, this was a tightrope of utter brilliance. Lucy, God bless the King, his speech is brave and brilliant. This is beginning to sound like North Korea, isn't it? Zach says, listening to the speech by our King from Saudi Arabia, honestly, can't be more proud to be British. Well, I hope you've enjoyed our broadcast over the last couple of days in Washington, D.C. It's been an absolute privilege to be here with Simon and his team at Feature Story News, who've kept us on air, thank goodness. And thanks to everyone back at the ranch in Leicester Square and Millbank. I'll be back, believe it or not, on air tomorrow night, live from London.
What a man.
Not jet lagged at all. It'll be a brilliant show, Simon.
It'll be crap. I'll be listening.
Thanks. Such a liar. Thanks for all of your calls and messages this evening. As I said, I'm back tomorrow from 7, back in the UK, and I'll be joined by the latest of our local, this is news to me, of our local elections phone-ins by Labour's Heidi Alexander. She's a Transport Secretary in Keir Starmer's government. She'll be taking your calls between 7 and 8 tomorrow evening. I might just let her do a monologue and I'll have a little sleep while she's talking. Coming up at 1 on LBC, it's James Max. But right now, in for Ben Kentish, here's Henry Riley.
Thank you very much, Ian. Safe travels. Good evening at 10 o'clock.
The bond of kinship and identity between America and the United Kingdom is priceless and eternal. It is irreplaceable and unbreakable.
King Charles heralds the